Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to colinslaststand.com. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode 105. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined, as always, by Chris Bandicoot Raygun. Chris, how are you today? How's life?
Pretty okay. Nothing to complain about, I don't think. Not yet, anyway.
How's the new apartment?
Pretty good. I'm enjoying it. The internet is so much faster. Do you remember when I told you, like, whenever I upload a file to the Google Drive for this podcast, it takes like 30 minutes?
Yeah.
I got all 2 hours of the Last of Us spoiler cast in like, I think 30 seconds.
That's awesome.
So it's a massive increase.
It's good to know. I want you to now begin taking high resolution pictures of yourself and sending them to me. But I'm not talking about like sexual pictures. I just want you to take high resolution pictures of just you doing random things around your apartment.
Yeah, like
day in the life kind of thing.
Yeah, like portraits or candids.
Right, exactly. And then send those to me via the Google Drive as well. Well, I'm glad the apartment is treating you well. Is it more quiet? Is it roachless? Is, I think, what we all want to know.
It is roachless. It's relatively quiet. It's as quiet as a building in this location can be. Not too loud, not too annoying. I found a single tiny ant, but honestly, I'm fine with it. Ants never really bothered me, especially like not in like small volumes, like one every couple minutes or one every couple like hours or days.
one ant every couple minutes just kind of roams on by.
Yeah, with a little picket fence.
Not a very efficient operation those ants are running. I had an ant problem in San Francisco, and I live really clean, so it was really frustrating because they were just trying to get inside during rainy season.
Yeah.
And there was like nothing I could do about it. It was ridiculous. Like no matter how much I cleaned, what I sprayed, they would inevitably return to the scene of the crime over and over again. These dumb motherfuckers. And I was at war with these dudes for years, but they were winning. And I'm sure in that apartment, they're still there to this day.
Yeah, I've definitely fought. I've dealt with ants. I've dealt with everything. Like stink bugs and roaches are the ones that I can't stand because they're just unlikable creatures. Like an ant at least has like 2 animated movies about them to get them like kind of like in your consciousness and be like, oh, I remember Flick, you know. But roaches aren't so keen. They all they do is survive.
They do. I mean, they survive everything. I've heard this term stink bug before.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about them. I'm looking at the Wikipedia for them right now. This is a really horrifying looking creature. It almost looks like flat in some way here.
Yeah, they're really, really frustrating. They engulfed my house in upstate New York constantly. They would like leak in through the air conditioners, hundreds of them. Like an insane amount. And they're bigger than you think they are, and they're annoying, and they smell really bad if you kill them. So it's like you gotta carefully dispose of them without like, it's just a mess. And they're like, I think they got here through like they stowed away on like an import boat from like Asia in like the early 1900s or something. They're just a completely indigenous?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, they're non-indigenous.
Yeah, I'm reading about that. I'm reading about this right now. You're right. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. In the United States, $37 million in apple crops were lost because of the stink bug in 2010.
Yeah.
So these little sons of bitches are there not. Now there's, oh my God. Now there's like pictures of fucking eggs and larvae. I can't look at this anymore.
Yeah. Spare yourself.
I don't want to look at that anymore. Well, thank you, Chris, for being here. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for what is ostensibly a PlayStation podcast called Sacred Symbols. We do it each and every week, and you can get it early and ad-free, if I can speak. Early and ad-free on Patreon, patreon.com/colinslaststand. June 2020 was our biggest month yet, and we are really appreciative of that. We're moving into July now. So come join us on Patreon at the $1 level, $2 level, $5 level, whatever you can afford. You get all sorts of special perks. The biggest perks of all are, of course, I can't speak. The biggest perks of all, of course, is what I meant to say, are the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to the show. We put up a thread every week. You can submit them, and that's where we read a whole litany of things from you. And of course, the early ad-free access we already mentioned, and Sacred Symbols Plus, which is our weekly supplemental podcast available only to patrons. Last week's was the first of a 2-part spoiler cast for The Last of Us Part 2. We did not intend on doing a 2-part spoiler cast, but we had so many great questions and comments from the audience that we wanted to extend it. So this cumulative Sacred Symbols Plus adventure into The Last of Us 2 land, called the United States, I guess, in 2038, is going to be about 4 hours long. And I was reading some of the feedback from the show. A lot of people, not a lot, I don't want to say a lot of people. I think most people listened to it and liked it a lot. But some people kind of listened to it and thought that I didn't talk enough in the show. I always feel like I talk too much. So that was a strange piece of feedback that I did not anticipate. So I guess I need to be more mindful of that moving forward. And I'll just cut Chris off and do all those kinds of things to make sure he speaks as little as possible.
Yeah.
On the second part, because we are going to do the second part. That will be live soon. So go to patreon.com/CollinsLastStand if you want to check those out. We did get a lot of Last of Us 2 related questions to this particular episode again. We talked about it pretty extensively last week on the show too. We're not going to talk about the game too deeply on this show anymore because we dedicated like a half an hour to it last week. We'll talk about it a little bit this week, but 4 hours on Sacred Symbols Plus, I think is more than enough right now. And I'm a little leery of ruining the game for anyone. I don't want to be one of those guys. Not everyone's played it yet, obviously.
Definitely.
So go look forward to that. As usual, I'll remind you that Twin Breaker, our game, is out. It's on PS4 and Vita. It is shipping and all of this. Now, I'm getting some feedback. We have been getting feedback as people slowly get the games. A lot of these packages are getting stuck in customs in your various countries of origin. So just be patient. They're coming to you. But we did get a letter from Will Selfridge who said, "Hey, boys, just wanted to say fuck thieves. I've been away from my apartment to look after my mom, and in the interim, someone stole some packages in front of my apartment, and included were my copies of Twin Breaker. So yeah, whoever stole my shit, I hope you choke on the Vita cartridge." That's really unfortunate, Will, and I'm really sad to hear that. So message me on Patreon, DM me on Patreon, and I will send you a copy. I have a whole box of them, so I will send you a copy of the game. I'm sorry that it got stolen from you. No one else messaged me about it because I'm not sending anyone else a copy of the game. Just Will Selfridge. Hit me up. I'm sorry that happened. You thieves are the worst. Speaking of the game, though, I do want to talk about this for a moment. I'll get Chris's feedback on this as well, but we had kind of discussed this in passing. I never really went too deep into it, I don't think, on any of the shows, but maybe I did. For a few months, I've been working to acquire a portion of Lily Mo Games, the Canadian developer that made Twin Breaker, and it also made a game called Habroxia, and before that made a game called Perils of Baking. And that has gone through. All the paperwork is signed. I officially own 49% of Lily Mo Games now.
Oh, wow.
Which is based in Ontario. And actually, it's a subsidiary of Collins Last Stand. Collins Last Stand bought Lily Mo, 49% of it. I wanted to bring that up for 2 reasons. Number one, just to let you all know that this is happening. So I'm the chief creative director or officer of the studio, and I'm the lead writer of the studio now. So I'll be writing everything moving forward and kind of directing the creative vision of the studio. But I also wanted to bring that up because while our profit of Twin Breaker is pretty clear, it's a game about this show and it's a game I wrote. So obviously I make money on that. I often said in the past, Chris, that I wasn't making money on Lily Mo's other games, and people should go check those out. So Habroxia and Perils of Baking. That was true. That is no longer true. So I just want to clear that up. If you buy Habroxia now or Perils of Baking on any of the platforms they're available on, I will make money on those games now. So right. I want to just be very, very clear that moving forward, everything Lily Mo makes, I will profit on. I want to amend previous statements that were made before the acquisition. And so, yeah, I own 49% of Lily Mo, or CLS does, and just wanted to let everyone know that. So thank you for your time. Any thoughts on that, Chris?
I mean, it's pretty wild. How do you feel about it?
It's exciting. I mean, I'm so busy all the time that it's more work for me to do, but it's a way for me to segue my energies into other things that I want to do. And I've always wanted to make more games, and Twin Breaker was just the beginning. And I'm very proud of Twin Breaker, but it is just the beginning. It is just the beginning of my ambition.
Yeah.
In game dev. And I think Barry Johnson, who owns 51% of the studio, is a great partner, hardworking, industrious, intelligent, kind, all of these kinds of things that you want in a partner. He also lives in Ontario, so we never have to see each other. So that's also another plus to it as well. So yeah, wanted to throw that out there. Lilymo Games continues unabated. Our next game will be Habroxia 2, which I am writing. That comes out this fall. And then Twinbreaker 2 will be next year. And then our JRPG will be, we think, in 2022. So thank you for listening to all of that. Now let's get into some corrections and notes here from the audience, Chris, before we get into what we're playing and the news of the day.
Sure.
Danny Rogers wrote in and said, salutations, boys. I never thought I would write in with a correction for the show, but seeing as I've yet to see anyone mention this massive fuck up, I feel like I'm forced to. There's no way I was the only one screaming in agony. In agony, he says. As Colin went on and on about Conan and Xena being crossover shows during their new and improved drop segment, he clearly doesn't respect Kevin Sorbo or his legendary journeys. And to make it worse, you just know Chris was sitting there. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's Hercules, bro. Speak up, Maldonado. So that was a really egregious error that I actually realized pretty quickly. Someone told me that, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I can't believe that. It's one of those mistakes I made where I damn well know that it was Hercules and Xena, not Conan and Xena. I did watch these shows as a kid. I watched them every week. I think my dad thought I was being perverted watching Xena.
Yeah.
You know, Lucy Lawless or whatever, but I really wasn't into women at that time in middle school, really. So I was really watching it because I thought it was good. And so, yeah, that is an egregious error. Did you realize that I made that error, Chris? Is Danny's instinct right?
No. I only watched Xena. That was, I had no knowledge of Conan or Hercules. I didn't pay attention to that at all. I only know that Xena the Warrior Princess is a thing, and I think I watched it on, oh my God, was it on that channel where Wishbone was on? I feel like it was.
Wishbone was on PBS, wasn't it?
I don't know, but I feel like I saw it elsewhere. I don't know.
I feel like I watched it on like UPN or something like that.
UPN.
You know?
I haven't thought about that network in years. Oh my God.
What happened to them? Because the WB turned into the CW. That still exists. But UPN, they turned into something. I got to look this up here.
Yeah, they had like
UPN.
what do they have? They had like that Monique show.
Well, I think a lot of it, like towards the end, was kind of directed towards like a black audience. So
Yeah.
they, like towards the last 10 years or so, I feel like a lot of their programming was aimed at like just the kind of the black suburban audience. But I'm trying to find what the hell happened to them. What CBS Corporation and Time Warner jointly announced on January 24th, 2006 that the companies would shut UPN down. Oh, so they shut down the WB and the UPN and then combined them into the CW.
Oh,
that's
weird.
what it is.
That's so weird.
Yeah. But yeah, I used to watch like a lot of these shows on UPN. I used to watch hockey on UPN as well. There were hockey games on UPN. But so I don't know what I'm even talking about. Oh yeah, Hercules, Legendary Journey. So Xena, I believe, was a spinoff of Hercules. She was like in Hercules and then she had her own show. That's where Lucy Lawless became famous. Of course, Lucy Lawless is best though, of course, in Battlestar Galactica. But yeah, Danny, you're right. I did get some other letters about this. I'm sorry. All right. I'm sorry.
Her name is Lawless?
Yeah, Lucy Lawless. You know who she is?
Yeah, of course I watched Xena, but I didn't know that was her name.
Yeah, do you remember what was the chick, you know her like blonde companion
On
in Xena?
On Xena?
Yeah, what was her companion's name? I got to look this up. I should probably be doing this when I'm not. What the hell was her companion's name? It was like some blonde chick and she used like a bow staff.
I genuinely cannot for the life of me even come close to remembering.
Oh, Gabrielle, that's her name. I remember her. Yeah, Gabrielle.
She was also punk rock girl in 2002's Spider-Man.
Oh, interesting.
Don't even know what the hell that means.
Why was she at Comic-Con in 2016? Oh, Ash versus the Evil Dead.
Oh, that makes sense.
She's the main character in that. She was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, yeah, she's in Parks and Rec. I totally forgot about that.
Wild.
Yeah, and then she was in Battlestar, of course, as Deanna Beers. And then Xena ran until 2001. Go figure. Okay, well, that's enough of that. Dialon wrote into us, Chris. He wanted to kind of correct something as well. He said, Buenos, how do you say this? Buenos Diaz, right? Buenos Diaz?
What? Buenos Dias?
Buenos. God, I'm so white. Hello, Sacred Colin and Symbolic Chris. On episode 104, Colin mentioned that Batman Arkham Origins is the bastard child of the Arkham series and is largely overlooked and seemingly unacknowledged by Rocksteady's trilogy. However, In Batman Arkham Knight, if the player navigates to the GCPD evidence room, there are multiple examples of Origin's canonical existence in Rocksteady's trilogy, including gear from the Electrocutioner and Anarchy, as well as specific bits of dialogue from cops and criminals, distinctly referencing the events of Arkham Origins. To be clear, I think Origins is great and absolutely should have been included in the Return to Arkham collection on PS4. I don't mean this as a correction, but more of an insight. Enjoy your new lodgings, you magnificent bastards. Thank you, Dylon. I think that's totally reasonable. It's not one of the annoying corrections that Chris gets really upset about.
Yeah.
So I think that these are two, Danny and Dylon, I think these are two fine corrections. Chris, let's get back into Logan Williams's saga from last week, if people recall the deodorant in the butt saga.
Yeah.
He writes in all caps, deodorant in the butt crack follow-up. He wanted to catch my attention. And catch my attention he did. He said, "Hello, my gentlemen. Following up from last week, I take umbrage with Chris's response that I just need to shower," in quotes. "I shower daily, maybe even twice if I run. I am one of those hippie natural all right. I am one of those hippie natural deodorant users, so I don't use it to stop from having swamp ass. To be honest, I'm not a very sweaty person. I do have a large ass, and I do use 2 separate sticks and the same scent." All right, so that answers one of the important questions I had. "There is just nothing better than getting out of the shower, taking a small squat, and putting a swipe or two between the cheeks. Being a manscaper, having a smooth, lubed up butt crack also makes wiping a joy. I gotta say, I think you should try it. I used to use baby powder like Colin. I would puff up the old Franken beans after the shower. My wife even called it ghost penis. I guess I'll leave it there. Have a happy 4th, fellas." So, Chris, we have some new information here from Logan. I don't know if the story ends here. I don't know if we have any more follow-ups for him, but how do you feel about this? First of all, how do you feel about him using the natural deodorant? I hate that shit.
Yeah, that's barely anything. You actually might as well just not even do it. Like, right. I feel like you're not doing anything. I feel like it's like a placebo. Isn't natural deodorant just like oil?
I don't really know. It's like, like Tom's from Maine, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know that brand? Yeah. That's what I think about.
Just use a real deodorant.
Stuff. Yeah, just use I use Dove. I like Dove for men.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
I just use literally anything that I find that is deodorant.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
I don't have like a weird preference. Like I don't go to like the what is it, the soap aisle and have like a specific soap or shampoo or deodorant picked
Really?
out. No, yeah.
Wow.
I don't
That's
care.
crazy.
I just figure like if it's deodorant and it's soap and it's shampoo, it's gonna do what it's supposed to do because they wouldn't sell it if it didn't. So like I'm totally fine swapping scents and like I just don't care.
Interesting. But they do sell the natural hippie deodorant that Logan uses, and that doesn't work. I've always been, well, maybe, it seems to work for Logan, because I got to say, I can relate to Logan where I'm not really much of a sweater. I've been with, girls that I've been with in the past have always remarked like how I just smell really neutral. Like I don't smell like anything, even when I'm like working out or sweating or whatever. So I've actually unless I'm like going out or like I know I'm going to be around people, I don't wear deodorant at all. Because I've actually been instilled with this fear in my mind, which I think is only for antiperspirant and not so much deodorant. Remember how they used to say, like, if you wore antiperspirant, like you would get breast cancer, even if you were a man, because like the sweat glands can't breathe and then all of that shit gathers under the armpit or whatever. This was a thing when I was a kid and it always stuck with me. So a few years ago when I started working from home, I'm like, fuck it, I'm not wearing deodorant at all unless I really need it. But I do shower like twice a day. Typically, I like to shower quite a bit. I love being I was actually in the shower for like an hour today, which was kind of nice. I actually just stood there thinking and drank a beer in the shower today.
Oh, that's the best.
It was really nice. Yeah,
drinking like a cold beverage in a glass bottle in a hot shower is like amazing.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. So what were we talking about here? Oh, yes, Logan Williams. So I guess no judgment from you. You got to do what you got to do. I think the big thing that I wanted to know is if you use separate sticks, and you say you do. My question though is that all right, so this gets a little complicated, Chris, because he says he uses the same scent. So presumably these sticks look the same. So how do you tell them apart? Does one have like your ass hair in it or something?
Yeah, maybe peels the label off one of them. That's always the smart way to go about it whenever you have two of something.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Logan, thank you for following up with us. We appreciate this new saga on our show. And happy 4th to you as well. And then now this is going to just drive you into a rage, I think, this kind of ancillary follow-up. Kate O'Brien wrote into us and said, "Hello, gentlemen. Writing in the follow-up on the deodorant conversation from last week, while I don't put deodorant in my butt crack, I do put deodorant in my leg crevices. Like armpits, even after a shower, things can get a bit musty, especially during the summer. It's necessary to keep things fresh and clean down there. I definitely use a separate stick for arms and legs, but nonetheless, I found this commentary relevant. Keep up the great work, and congratulations to Chris for moving out of that child-torturing apartment, and Colin on Rush's new house. Thank you. Chris, how do you feel about Kate O'Brien putting deodorant in the leg crevices?
I just don't... What? So what even is a leg crevice? Isn't that just your groin?
No, I think what he's talking about is behind the knee, where the thigh attaches to the whatever that is, the lower leg. I think that's what he's talking about.
That makes even less sense.
Yeah.
I
mean, he could be talking about. Do you think he's talking about like where the thigh attaches to the ass?
I don't.
Is that what he means?
I'm just having a tough, because he would have said like, would you refer to the back of your knees as a leg crevice? Like,
I don't know.
I don't think I would. I feel like I would refer to it as the back of my knees.
I'm looking up leg crevice, seeing what happens. When I look up leg crevice, for some reason, the first thing that comes up is a book and a film, both Wikipedia, Touching the Void. And then Joe Simpson, How I Survived My Climbing Accident. So I don't think this is a term. I don't think this is a term.
I'm spiraling, man. I can't even begin to grasp like what we're talking about here. I'm gonna need to follow up on what a leg crevice is. But if you're putting deodorant behind your knees, I don't even know how to help you. Like, is it for your dog, as it's walking beside you, so it doesn't smell your sweaty back of the knees?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
I'm such defeated.
I know. I should have read that at the end, because now I don't even want to do the rest of the show.
That's it. Take care, guys.
Yeah, that's enough. How long have we been going? 20 minutes? That's good enough. 20 minutes is good enough. All right, let's hear from... I like this question from Zach Dalton. And I really understand what he's saying here. He says, hey, friends, simple question. Do birds get enough credit for being the descendants of dinosaurs? Do birds get enough credit for being the descendants of dinosaurs? I got to say, I hear Zach here. I feel like they don't. I feel like they don't get enough credit.
I feel like they don't deserve it.
No.
No, you don't get to just take the credit of your ancestors, especially when they're that far removed.
Yeah.
You know, you're if anything, your ancestors really set you up for failure by devolving you to the horrendously weaker state that you are now as a generic bird. A cassowary who still manages to maintain the durability of a dinosaur, at least in my eyes, that's respectable. I respect that, because despite its million years of de-evolution, it's still a threatening beast that I would want no part of. But like a sparrow or like a pigeon or a chicken,
like an oriole, you don't want any part of it. Yeah, you don't want, like, you could just punch an oriole out if you wanted to, just kill it.
I could even some of the more threatening, like mundane, like first world birds, like swans. Like I fear no swan. I fear no swan.
Not even the swan from Curb Your Enthusiasm that like chases Larry and Larry ends up killing it with a golf club.
In the golf course, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know, man. Swans. Every time I see a video of a swan chasing somebody, I can't help but just think like, why aren't you just strangling this thing?
Just turn around and kick it.
It's got the most strangleable neck of the animal kingdom.
It really does. You're totally right. And its body is shaped like a large football, so you should just turn around and fucking boot it.
Yeah.
You know?
I would have no qualms about punting a swan.
Yeah, they must get wild if people are that scared of them. You know, I don't know why else you would run from. I've never been chased by a swan.
Yeah, I've never been chased by a swan.
Maybe in that moment, I would also fear the swan. I don't know.
Well, what it is, they do that wing thing, right? Where they open their wings up to seem like bigger than you. But you can't fool me. You can't fool me.
You're smarter than that.
Yeah.
You know
what's going on. Punch me
on.
with your wing, idiot?
When I was staying at my mom's waiting for my house to be ready, she has like a backyard that faces these woods. And I did notice, I'm not much of a bird watcher or a birder, I think they're called in ornithological terms. But she had like a bunch of birds in the backyard, including like this family of blue jays and cardinals, where I was like, wow, these are really pretty color. It makes me wonder like how evolutionarily these bright birds survived for so long, because you see like a fucking normal little brown shitty bird and you're like, I don't care. I don't give a shit about this bird. But you see like a cardinal or an oriole or a blue jay or whatever. And you're like, wow, this is like look at the beautiful colors. you would assume that would attract a lot more attention to them. I was reading recently about the carrier. What is it? The carrier pigeon, I think, which was like a really prolific bird in the North American continent until like 120 years ago or something. And it just went totally extinct. And if you read about how it went extinct, it's fucking crazy. People were slaughtering these motherfuckers by like the thousands and thousands, like setting up massive nets to catch them. And they just put them out. They were done. That was the end of the carrier pigeon.
Are carrier pigeons not just pigeons?
No, I think they're smaller. And
what the fuck?
Let's see. Yeah, where is the extinct? Maybe I'm talking about the wrong one. Extinct is it the passenger pigeon? Is that what I'm? Yeah, I'm sorry, the passenger pigeon. The passenger pigeon is extinct, not the other kind of pigeon.
Oh yeah, that looks like a different kind of bird. Yeah.
Yeah, look at this. You seen the Wikipedia, like the black and white picture of this thing? Because I think they had some in captivity until like 100 years ago. That doofy looking motherfucker was one of the very last of his kind.
I thought I genuinely thought you were making like I thought it was like wrong for so many years where I just thought that the carrier pigeon and the pigeon were just the same thing and they just used pigeons as carriers. You tripped me out. I thought that you made me think that they were like different, completely different species.
No, I think they're birds of some kind. Just like the because I do like the connection between the dinosaur and the bird, because it was cool when they figured out, I guess, with some I was going to say some relics, some artifacts that they found, where they found like fossils, and there was like evidence that that birds had like feathers. It's pretty cool.
Well, that dinosaurs had feathers, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, but dinosaurs had feathers, right? Yeah, you're right.
That's crazy. Yeah, it is. Did you see the picture of the bat that's about the size of a 5-year-old boy?
Oh yes, I saw that. Barstool Sports tweeted that out. I'm sure other people did as well. And I said this to them. I'm like, that might be literally the scariest thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, it's just this emaciated boy with wings like hanging upside down, and he's basically like a mutant. It's so tall. It's so much bigger than I thought it would be.
Oh, it's fucked up, dude. I mean, what that picture is fucked up. I was like, it's like something out of Castlevania where I'm like, this is not acceptable to be existing in the real world. Like, how are you not murdering that thing? Right? If I saw that thing flying around, I would make it my whole life's mission to eradicate them from the entire planet.
Yeah, they're definitely
that thing has to be 4 feet tall, man. I mean, that thing has to be 4 feet tall.
Yeah, it's not all right. It's not an all right thing to see. It's a ghostly visage for sure. That is impressive though, that they can be that size.
It is impressive. It's more impressive that it's just hanging there on someone's house, and it's got its wings around it. It's like, man, this is vampiric, man. I don't like this at all.
You could definitely see where vampire legends came from if that's like a thing that's been around for a long time, which it obviously clearly is.
Definitely. I mean, if you're walking around Transylvania in the 1600s and you're seeing this shit, yeah, I would imagine that you're living on the edge over there. No doubt about it. Finally, before we get into what we're playing, Nick Eden wrote into us. I'm actually curious about your opinion on this, because this is a divisive topic, even in our native New York, where I think this is most prevalent. He says, "Sup, boys, tell me why it's okay for ketchup to be on eggs. It's delicious. Please agree. Love you both and take care." Chris, do you like ketchup on eggs?
I'm not a ketchup person in general.
That's right.
So like,
that's right. Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't really put ketchup on anything, but I've never considered it like an affront to put ketchup on eggs, because I've seen it done a lot. So I just assume that it's like a normal thing.
So when you get a bacon, egg, and cheese in New York on a Kaiser roll or a bagel or whatever at the local deli, what do you put on it? Do you put any sort of moist condiment on it? Mayonnaise or something?
Maybe sometimes mayonnaise, but like I don't even really. I just get a bacon, egg, and cheese, and I'm fine with it. Like,
so there's ketchup, because there's ketchup on that. So you're okay with that being on there, or are you saying you just get it with nothing else?
I get a bacon, egg, and cheese, and that's what I. If it's dry, then I just won't get a bacon, egg, and cheese from that place again, because I've had bacon, egg, and cheeses that like where the egg is like moist enough to keep it like really, to keep it from being like insanely dry.
It's funny because, well, I don't know if it's funny or even interesting, but First of all, my first real job was in a deli in high school for several years, and I would like cook the egg sandwiches and stuff.
Yeah.
And when I went to Boston for college and then to California for IGN and all that, and I would put ketchup on like, I don't put ketchup on like eggs if they're just by themselves, but if I would make an egg sandwich or something, I would put ketchup on it. And this would like make people aghast. And I was like, where I'm from, it's weird not to put ketchup on your egg sandwiches. That's what you do. I like putting mayonnaise on it too, but it feels a little redundant because the main ingredient of mayonnaise is indeed an egg. So
I understand that. I think what it is, it's like I'm more of a drinker than an eater. Like I'll drink like a million times a day, but I could have like maybe 2 meals and be fine. So like I've never been in a situation where I'm eating something dry and I don't have an immediate remedy for it, because I always have something. I'm always sloshing something down my gullet. So like I've never needed, oh man, this is so dry, I wish I had like mustard or ketchup on it. I'll experiment though. Like I'll put like, every now and then I'll put ketchup on an egg sandwich just out of, just to spice things up a little bit, but it's not like a thing that I go out of my way to do.
When you go to our beloved Five Guys, do you get mayonnaise or A1 or something on your burger?
No, I just get the burger with the lettuce and tomato and whatever the hell.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That answers that, I guess.
And bacon.
Yeah, and bacon, which again is a very divisive topic for me. I saw you tweet out about that, and you claim that everyone like me were vegans. There's no greater insult than to call me a vegan. First rule of Vegan Club: tell everyone about Vegan Club. One of my still probably one of my favorite. The only meme that I can think of that I love more than that meme is the meme of the pregnancy test, and it says "just fat" on the thing, which is like
sounds like a Joe Biden quote.
Yeah, exactly. It does. I see that every once in a while, and it fucking makes me bust out laughing where it just says "just fat." I just absolutely love that. I think it's so funny. So I've been playing Mass Effect on my PlayStation 3 lately, and it's a stark reminder of what the future could be. No, I'm not talking about the end of the galaxy and the Reapers and all that stuff. I'm talking about the impressive scope of these civilizations' technology. Faster than light travel, mass relays, fusion weapons, the list goes on and on. Humans and aliens alike even have impressive futuristic means of communication. But you know what they don't have in the far-flung galactic future? Obnoxious telecoms charging people way too much for service. It's almost as if the devs at BioWare could delve into the more immediate future and see how Mint Mobile was going to change the game. Mint Mobile's approach is simple. You get premium network coverage at a fraction of the cost you're used to paying, largely because Mint Mobile keeps its operation lean. Its retail locations are non-existent, and its overhead is low, so it's able to pass on considerable savings to you, which is what I find most impressive about their product. Many of us pay a lot of money for our mobile plans, but with Mint Mobile, you don't have to do that, and their plans are highly customizable, so you can figure out what works best for you when it comes to nationwide talk and text. Like, I'm a text guy. I don't want to talk to you on the phone. In fact, everyone in my life knows that if you call me, you better be dying, because otherwise I'm going to be upset that you bothered me. But if you're a chatterbox like some people in my family, you can get unlimited talk minutes with your plan, and if you're like me, unlimited text might be more your speed too. And yes, there are data plans galore, so you can choose exactly the amount of bandwidth you need. Oh, and you can use the phone you already own, keep your phone number, and much more. So the only thing you'll be ditching is your old telecom. Kind of like how Commander Shepard ditched Ashley for Miranda in Mass Effect 2. And as I found out upon a simple browsing session, their website is straightforward and easy to use too, so you can catapult yourself to maximum savings straight away. Speaking of websites, to get your new Mint Mobile wireless plan and cut your monthly cell phone payments to as low as $15 a month, head to mintmobile.com/sacred. That's mintmobile.com/SACRED. Embrace the future, just like the Protheans once did, but in real life instead of in a video game. That's mintmobile.com/sacred. All right, Chris, let's talk about, this is a PlayStation podcast, I promise. So let's talk about what we are playing. It says here you're playing our beloved Horizon Zero Dawn from Guerrilla Games. What made you want to go back to Horizon?
Yeah, I mean, I'd been meaning to go back to it, and now that pretty much The Last of Us 2 is done and Ghost of Tsushima is like kind of on the horizon, I think I have enough time to really kind of sink my teeth into Horizon, because I never really got a chance to finish it. Like I played it initially for a little bit and it just kind of lost me, and I just sort of fell off it, and there was no way that I was going to jump back in where I was. Also because I just lost all my save data anyway. So I'm going into it from the beginning just to see what I missed, maybe figure out if I feel differently now than I did then. And I'm not far into it. I'm really only up to the part where you're looking for Rost. In like pretty much the intro sequence. Like I'm no longer a child. I'm no longer Kid Aloy. But it's really, really early. So it's hard for me to really say that I've seen much of anything to change my mind. But I will say, man, something that bothered me then and still does, especially now, the animations, specifically during cutscenes of people's faces, look really uncanny. And they're really like porcelain and kind of creepy, and like child Aloy looks like a little person playing a child. You know what I mean? Like she waddles, She has that waddly quality, and like it really is dissettling. That's the main reason why I wanted to restart it, so I could just like get past that point, so I could go to the non-Uncanny Valley adult Aloy and not have to see that Chucky looking monstrosity.
Yeah, you had to confront it in order to move past it.
Yeah, I had to be like, okay, I'm gonna redo this, but I just want to, I really want to rip this Band-Aid off. But it's gorgeous still. Like the environments are still really good looking, even now.
Yeah, are you feeling optimistic that you're going to enjoy it more this time, or?
Yeah, I think
what?
so. I think I have a better handle on those kinds of games. I think just the fact that it's so removed from the public consciousness, and like it's not something that people talk about. Back when I played it, like everybody was talking about it, and everybody was like getting on my ass about playing it, and I just wasn't feeling it. So now it's like, okay, now I'm just playing this of my own accord. I want to play it. I don't feel pressured into it. It's nice already. It's nicer.
No, that's good to hear. So I actually have to return to Horizon in the coming months myself, because Dagan and I have to do a topic for Knockback, an episode of Knockback about it, our retro podcast that was voted on by the audience. And it's really goes to show how broken I am, because I'm like, I already got the platinum trophy in it. I don't even really want to play it again. And that really shouldn't be relevant at all. But I never did play that winter spinoff like expansion thing.
Oh,
winter,
yeah.
Whatever it's called. And there's also, I think, New Game Plus and stuff, and a harder difficulty that they put in as well, and attach trophies to that. So I think I'm going to go in and I think I still have my save and stuff in the cloud. I'll just go in and play New Game Plus. So I'm actually looking forward to playing it too, because in seeing Forbidden West, which is the Horizon PS5 game, as we know, that is going to come out, I think, in 2021. It's like, well, I might as well reacclimate myself to Aloy's story, because it has been a long time. I mean, that game came out so long ago, relatively speaking, that I was still at Kind of Funny when Horizon came out. So it's been a while. I think I played it in February or March of 2017. So
yeah,
it's been more than 3 years. So it is time to go back to it one last time. So I'm glad to hear that you're going back to a good first party game as we prepare ourselves and steel ourselves for Ghost of Tsushima, which I want to talk about in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still playing The Last of Us Part 2. I haven't played it in a few days. I've actually been playing at night Castlevania Rondo of Blood. I'm so bad at it that it's actually frustrating me. It's making me annoyed about how much my gaming skills are atrophying, where I'm like, I can't even get past the fourth stage in a Castlevania game. I want to fucking kill myself. But so I don't know what's going on with me there, but I've also been trying to just truck through The Last of Us Part 2. I've been playing it on Twitch. I did like a 3-hour stream the other day, Long Island Viper, if you guys want to follow me there. And I just want to play it again, just to not only get the platinum trophy, but just to see some of the things I missed, because there was actually I won't talk about it here, no spoilers, but there is a decent sized component to the story that I actually missed completely. And we talked about it in the first part of the Last of Us Part 2 spoiler cast we did on Sacred Symbols Plus, and I want to rectify that. So there must be other things I missed too. Sometimes I feel stupid when I play a video game that has a dense story and I miss things.
Yeah.
And it seems like everyone else gets it but me. I felt that way about Control when we did the Control spoiler cast, where I'm like, I don't even really understand this game. And there's like all this deep lore. So maybe I just don't pay close enough attention. Or maybe I'm stupid. I don't know.
Yeah, I have that issue sometimes too, where I'm just like, how was I supposed to know about this? You know?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's like when you see a movie, I guess you can't keep up with everything, or you don't keep up with everything, especially in TV shows where sometimes I'm watching something and I'm like, what the fuck is happening here? I don't even understand this. And it was like something I missed 5 episodes ago. Or if you watch like the Game of Thrones and you just have no idea what's going on. I just kind of rolled with that one.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I'm just going to keep going. All right, let's talk a little bit about Ghost of Tsushima, though, before we move on, because it is relevant now that it's coming up in just a couple of weeks. Actually, it is out in reviewers' hands right now. We are not considered reviewers or even living entities by Sony PR. So we obviously are not going to get the game. We'll buy it when it comes out. I'm looking forward to it. I'll happily buy Ghost of Tsushima to support Sucker Punch. But Hunter Holiday wrote into us, said, hey guys, after the release of The Last of Us Part 2, does your hype for Ghost of Tsushima increase at all? Thanks for being the best podcast I listen to. This is an interesting question, Chris. I'm especially keen to get your opinion on this because you didn't really like The Last of Us Part 2 very much. So what is your hype level for Ghost of Tsushima now? Has it altered at all in the wake of The Last of Us?
Yeah, I think, my hype was never like particularly high. Like I was always interested in playing it, but I'm certainly more keen on playing it now, only because I expected to have a better time with a Naughty Dog game than I ended up having. So yeah, I'm definitely looking more forward to it than I was before. I'm looking forward to just jumping into a kind of a samurai type experience again, because it's been a while since I played Sekiro 2. Not that was like necessarily samurai, but I'm looking forward to it. I still think Ghost of Tsushima is going to be like a solid game. I don't know if it's going to be like a great like a 10 out of 10 experience, but I don't imagine that I'm going to dislike Ghost of Tsushima.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, I've been saying it from the go, especially when we saw the gameplay finally of an extended variety for the game. And I'm like, this game looks like it's going to be good. Oh, maybe great. And I have no doubt about that. And I like Sucker Punch a lot. I'm a huge Infamous fan and I love Sly Cooper. So I've been with them for a long time. And so I'm eager to play anything they have to put out. And especially because they've been quiet for a long time. First Light came out in 2014, 2015 when we got Second Son and First Light. So it's been a long time since we've seen something from Sucker Punch. So there's a lot of anticipation just from that genetic standpoint, let's say, of seeing what they're up to and what they've put out here. I think my hype has gone up a little bit for it because now I don't know that has anything to do with either game, though. I think it's just that The Last of Us Part 2 is just occupying so much of my bandwidth and thinking about it and playing it, getting through it and anticipating it. So now I can segue over to Ghost of Tsushima. Now I'm anticipating it because now it's the next up on the list for me.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just a more of an order of operations thing. I don't think it has anything to do with either game, but I am looking forward to playing Ghost of Tsushima. At the time we're recording this, it'll come out in about 2 weeks. So we will not have to wait very long. And obviously we'll do a spoiler cast for that as well. Paul McFerrin wrote into us and said, hey, C Squared, hope all is well. My question to you, with the overtly negative Metacritic reviews for The Last of Us Part 2, would you find it surprising for Ghost of Tsushima to do the opposite? I predict a middling critical reception, but a praising fan score. That further divide between critical and consumer impressions would certainly be interesting. Stay well, fellas. What do you think of this? This is an interesting question from Paul. How do you think that the game is going to be received from players? Because the vocal player base of The Last of Us Part 2 doesn't like the game. Doesn't mean that most people don't like the game. I think a vast majority of the people that play The Last of Us Part 2 like it a lot. But the people that are going out of their way to say something positive or negative, it seems to have a negative patina to it. Mm-hmm. I feel like there might be I think Paul might be right. I think there might be some sort of compromise position with Ghost of Tsushima where people want to signal that they want something more gamey, less political in some way, or less social, let's say. What do you think? Do you think we're going to see something out of Ghost of Tsushima that's a reaction from the fan base to The Last of Us?
Yeah, for sure. I think what you're going to see is a lot of reviewers probably looking at it and being like, especially as a follow-up to Naughty Dog's greatest opus yet, I don't think Ghost of Tsushima lives up to the Sony standard. I feel like there's probably going to be a little bit of that. I don't think it's going to be like 6 out of 10s or anything. But I do think there's going to be like, I can't help but feel negatively after the masterpiece that was Last of Us. And then I feel like players are going to be like, I'm a samurai. This is awesome. I feel like
they're not going to worry too much about the ahistorical nature of it. And
yeah.
There's going to be a lot of complaints about that. There are going to be complaints about white people making the game. And I mean, there's going to be complaints about those kinds of things, I think.
Yeah,
well.
but I'm anticipating it to be. I think it's going to have a hugely positive fan reception. I think it's the fact that you can, and I don't know if this is like necessarily true, but it feels like there's like a general kind of favoritism towards like Japanese games in general. I don't think people have a negative opinion of Japanese games, and not necessarily that Ghost of Tsushima is a Japanese game, because it's not. But the fact that it's about Japan and everything is Japanese in it, and you can play the whole game in Japanese. I think that's going to be like a huge win for a lot of people who don't normally get games like this, of this caliber, specifically in AAA, in the AAA space. I think people are going to really dig it. But that's just, obviously, I haven't played it yet. It's just all assumptions based on what I've seen. But
yeah, and the embargo's early too, so I think they're maybe more confident than we thought.
Yeah.
In the game.
When's the embargo?
I think it's 3 days before the game comes out. The embargo for The Last of Us was 7, which is a huge embargo gap. So yeah, I think it's the 14th or something like that, something of this nature. So yeah, I'm with you, and it's funny you say this, Chris, because the reception of Japanese games has vacillated so greatly over time. And again, like you're saying, Sucker Punch is in Washington; they're not a Japanese studio, but this is a game that takes place in Japan in that samurai era. On Tsushima Island or whatever it is. And so with the Mongols and all that. So there's a historical kind of quality to it. But I feel like it's so funny watching the pendulum swing, because it was only 10 years ago that everyone hated everything coming out of Japan. And now Japanese games have a really solid feeling in regard to them, whether you're talking about FromSoft or you're talking about Platinum, talking about Tango, or you're talking about Nintendo, and you're talking about obviously Studio Japan and Polyphony and all these studios. They seem to, Indie Creates and others, there seems to be such a compensation. God, Capcom and all these others, it's so different, because Japanese gaming was dead. It was horrible, actually, for a while, like a little while. That's when Keiji Inafune and all those guys and Koji Igarashi were coming out and saying shit. And so it's cool to see that swing back, even though this isn't a literal Japanese game.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
But I'm with you there. I think that it's interesting. You know, I was going to tweet out about this last night, but I forgot. I think I got distracted. I was looking at games on PSN, like games that went on sale, because there's that one game that I want to buy that came out a couple years ago about the shopkeeper that like runs like an RPG item shop, and then he goes into dungeons at night and like gets items and then sells them. And I forget what it's called.
That's an awesome premise. Yeah,
it's really cool. And so I was looking at it. It's $20. I was like, that's a little expensive, but I was looking at all the games for sale, and then I was looking at the Japanese games like JRPGs and stuff, and I'm like, all of these games look and sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like the big AAA games and even the big AAA Japanese role-playing games, but there's like that mid-tier, like Compile Heart style or CyberConnect tier role-playing game where I'm like, there are literally 500 of these, and I have no idea what is different about any of them. Literally any of them. And I was just looking at the box art for them and reading the story synopses and stuff. I'm like, what the fuck is this? I almost have this morbid curiosity, and I wish I had more time much more time. I'd be like, I want to play this stuff. Like, what is going on with these games that all have these like weeb games that all have just the same looking characters, these kind of nonsensical titles and these same synopses. And it's just, so that stuff is still happening in Japan, but there's just a higher level of game coming out of there finally. And we see that with Resident Evil. We see that with The Evil Within. We see that with Bloodborne and all of the rest. So
Monster Hunter,
of course. And I didn't put it in the news because there's not a lot to say about it, but Capcom is talking about making another Monster Hunter game that's aimed more at like teens. And I'm like, that's a pretty shrewd idea, man. You get them hooked now, like they were on PSP, especially in Japan, and later 3DS or it's not DS, but 3DS. And then you have a customer for Monster Hunter World 2 or whatever on console. So
yeah.
All right. Let's get into the news. There's quite a bit to get through, although nothing too extraordinary, I don't think, to get through, but there's a few interesting notes.
Yep.
Number 1, The Last of Us Part 2, the most recent release from Sony's crown jewel studio Naughty Dog, may be a divisive game critically, particularly with some hardcore fans of the IP, but commercially, it is officially a smash hit. In its first 3 days on the market, The Last of Us Part 2 exceeded 4 million copies sold, making it the fastest selling first-party PS4 exclusive in the 7-year history of the console. However, these sales figures are a little outdated. Reported for the period ending way back on June 21st, it's safe to assume that The Last of Us Part 2 will be one of the best-selling PS4 exclusives ever when the dust settles, if not the best-selling, full stop. The Last of Us Part 2 launched on June 19th, and it is the follow-up to 2013's original The Last of Us, which first launched on PS3 and later came to PS4 in 2014. So we haven't gotten updated sales figures. There's some anecdotal evidence out of the UK and other places that track granular sales data on a weekly basis that the sales have fallen off substantially. But 4 million in 3 days is no joke for a PS4 game. And my assumption is that I still think Uncharted 4 is the best-selling PS4 exclusive at 16 million, if I'm remembering correctly. And I think The Last of Us Part 2 is going to beat it. What do you think? Do you think that we're going to see? Do you think that everyone that was really interested is buying it now, and now it's going to suffer with an anchor around its neck for whatever divisiveness it has, or do you think people will continue to be interested in it?
I think people will continue to be interested in it, but I do think it's probably going to fall off a little bit. It's such a divisive game, and it's a game that has such a fascinating type of publicity around it that I could see it. I could see it falling off a little bit quicker, and it doesn't really have like, I don't know, The Last of Us doesn't have like the swashbuckling quality that Uncharted has. You know, it's not a game that you buy and you think, oh, I'm gonna have a good time with this. You know, Last of Us really is like one of those things where it's like you're gonna really want to know if you want it, and you've probably made that decision already. I have no doubt it's gonna sell like a bunch like for years, but I don't know if it's gonna beat Uncharted 4. If Uncharted 4 has 16 million, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, we know that Naughty Dog will probably occupy the 1 and maybe at the least 3 spot because Spider-Man's in there.
Yeah.
At I think 12 or 13 million. So yeah, we'll track it. You're right that the divisive nature of it is fascinating. From my point of view, I like the game a lot more than you do, but I'm finding the reaction to it and this persistent conversation around it even more interesting than the game, because I think it's this weird inflection point and kind of this coming to a boil of how people feel about video games, how people feel about pretentiousness or social issues and gaminess and storytelling and character and ownership. There's a lot of different narratives going on around The Last of Us Part 2 that are so fascinating and much like EVE Online and other games that are just way more interesting to read about than play. I imagine that it will be the case for The Last of Us Part 2 for some time to come. That we're gonna be talking about that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. I feel like I'm kind of like on an alien world sometimes because I really think the game is great. I'm so confused. Not even because you're kind of more in the middle, but there are people that really hate it. And I'm like, what is so bad about it? I don't want to get too far into it because I don't want to spoil it for people here, but like, what is so bad about this game? It's so weird to me. I just don't understand.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I some people are extreme about it, and there were definitely. I'll say full stop. There were moments. There were pretty long stretches of time where I did truly despise it. Like I totally understand it because it's a game about character, and you know, when the characters don't land, you're just kind of not having a good time for a really long time. So I totally understand why people just like really don't like it. I just don't think it's objectively like a 4 out of 10 or like a, you know, it's not objectively a bad game, but like by any standard of measurement. It's just a divisive one. And I feel like it's like Death Stranding. And I feel like it's like any number of games that have come out recently that have just been like, hey man, you either love it or you hate it. Like you're not going to feel really okay about it. You know, I just don't like it, but I can remove myself from my own kind of headspace and be like, well, I don't like it, but it's not a bad game. You know? Yeah.
I mean, those are two. I think, well, maybe they're not different things, but I feel like they're different things where there's an objective quality to a game, however substantial or insubstantial or unsubstantial it is, where you can say like the game's beautiful, it's well acted, it's well animated, the combat's good, whatever the case might be. But I think people are certainly entitled to their opinions. I don't like this extremism one way or the other kind of going on where it makes it hard to see or figure out how people really feel about it. And you can't do this. You can't go back in time, but I would be so fascinated to know how this reception would be different in any way had the leaks not happened and set the sort of stage for anticipated disappointment. It's like what my brother says on our show Knockback sometimes. And we say to my family where it's like you go into a movie theater to see Star Wars and you have like your arms crossed and you're sighing and you're like just ready to be disappointed. And I feel like a lot of people went into The Last of Us Part 2 like that. And I wish I knew like how it would change.
Yeah. It definitely affected it, like without a doubt. But I don't necessarily think people go into those games like necessarily. Well, not everybody goes into a game like trying to confirm their bias. Like I talk all the time about how much how excited I was to talk shit about Death Stranding, and it ended up being like a pretty marquee game for me. So
yeah,
you know,
sure, you're right, and I like that. I like Death Stranding a lot too. I don't know that what I like more. I probably like The Last of Us Part 2 more. Death Stranding was a little long in the tooth for me at some point, but certainly a unique game that I think everyone should play. I was sad that it didn't sell better, although it's coming out on PC very soon, so maybe it'll find new life.
That's true.
With our PC nerds via 505 Games. All right, number 2. This is a big story here, and I feel like this is I don't know. I'll just read it and then we can talk about what exactly it is. Number 2, we've been saying it on the show since its inception and before that, in fact, but the cat is now seemingly out of the bag. Next-gen games are going to cost more than current-gen games do. Publisher Take-Two, particularly with its 2K brand, released word that its upcoming annualized basketball game NBA 2K21 will cost $59.99 USD on PlayStation 4, but $69.99 USD on PlayStation 5. While this isn't confirmation that all publishers will follow suit, it's essentially telegraphing that reality to consumers. If publishers went their own way on pricing, it wouldn't be unprecedented, but it would be the first time since the cartridge era that this was the case. In a comment given to website Kotaku, Take-Two PR said in part, quote, "We believe our suggested retail price for NBA 2K21 on next-generation platforms fairly represents the value of what's being offered. Power, speed, and technology that is only available on new hardware," end quote. This change has been a long time in coming. AAA retail video game prices literally haven't increased in the United States in a staggering 15 years. And with game development becoming more and more expensive, player expectations growing exponentially, and inflation eroding the value of the dollar, this move was completely inevitable. Interestingly, the generational gap between the games will also be represented on the new game's cover. Current gen iterations of the game, including on PlayStation 4, will sport Dame Lillard of the Portland Trailblazers, while next gen iterations of the game, including on PlayStation 5, will include the New Orleans Pelicans' Zion Williamson. NBA 2K21 comes to PlayStation 4 on September 4th, while the PS5 iteration will be a launch game for the console. All right, Chris, what do you think? We have ostensible confirmation that next gen games will be $70, which is what I predicted for a long time.
Yeah,
I was starting to get afraid that it was going to be 80, which I know was more your instinct, and I was starting to think you might have been right. 70 is kind of in the middle space, but we have confirmation this is happening. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me. It surprised me that it's not higher because I really don't think $10 is much of anything, and I don't think it's going to really do much of. I don't imagine it's going to do much of anything. But yeah, this is something that was coming for a long time. You know, I can't say I'm too staggered by it.
Yeah, it's funny too because I think it was just last week we were wondering, or maybe an audience member was wondering to us when we would hear about this. Will we hear about the game pricing before the consoles launched? Or before the consoles were revealed in terms of their price and pre-orders and all of that. And we have our answer now. The silence at the time we're recording this, it's worth noting this was announced the day we're recording this. So there hasn't been a lot of time for others to come out and talk about it. 2K is soliciting pre-orders for 2K21, so they needed to price it. But it would be hard for me to believe that an annualized sports game would cost $70 and Final Fantasy 16 or whatever is not going to cost $70. So I know a lot of people are holding on for dear life, thinking that this is just a publisher decision, but it's not. And by the way, even if it was a publisher decision, this means that Rockstar Games, 2K's other games like the new BioShock game and others, anything from Private Division and others are all going to be of the same price. So that's a big vertical right there.
Yeah.
$70 isn't unreasonable. I think $10 is going to go a long way if they can sell enough copies of the game. And I think that's the big concern. If you go up to $80, which might be more palatable for your capitalistic side, if you're a business owner, or a shareholder, I think $70 just isn't that market of a sticker shock. And I know other people in other countries are concerned about this in Canada, Australia, where they typically pay more for their games. And in Europe, even where they're paying some, in both euro and pound, where they're paying more for games. But we don't know what this is going to reflect in your native countries. But it's also worth noting, and I know Canadians don't like hearing this. I love our Canadians, but the Canadian dollar is really weak. The fact that you pay $80 or $70 for your game is meaningless. Because you're not paying $70 USD. You're paying $70 or $80 Canadian. It's different. They're different dollars. So whenever I put these things out on Twitter and then people hear back like, well, we're already paying $80 in Australia or whatever. And I'm like, that would be relevant if you were paying $80 in American money in Australia, but you're not. So we have to wait and see what, if any, increases are going to come in these other places. But I think I think you're right. This was inevitable. And I'm so glad the cat's out of the bag so we can just fucking move on. Although I think we're not going to be moving on anytime soon. I think we're going to see a lot of think pieces and a lot of hand wringing over this for some time to come. And like I said, it was during the PS3 and 360 era, as you know, Chris, where prices last went up from $50 to $60. So it's worth noting that if you let's just go to 2008. I'm putting it in the inflation calculator now. If you were paying $60 in 2008 for a game, you're paying the real value of that is $71.45. So that price increase of 19.1% inflation is actually pretty perfect. $70 is pretty much the encapsulation of the $60 value. So what I'm saying, I guess, is that even though it seems to some that they're getting gouged on this price increase, this actually just keeps up with the value of the dollar. There's actually no extra real profit going into this. And when you're talking about a game, like Sean Layden just said this last week in the interview that we discussed, when you're spending $150 million on a game, whether or not that's right or not, when a game is costing that much money, you can't charge $60 for it anymore. It's just not possible. Final Fantasy VII, as I recall, was like a $20 million game, and that was considered like absurd in 1997. So you're not making AAA games for $20 million anymore. And I think this is a necessary thing. So it's important for us to note too, we don't get our games for free. We pay for them. We pay for them just like you do. Most publishers don't give us games. We don't really ask for them. We don't really interact with any. So I can understand when people used to bust my balls at IGN are kind of funny and be like, well, you don't pay for your games. And I'm like, yeah, I guess that's true. I don't. But now I do. And so I still have no problem with this. But Mr. Worry wrote into us, and this is a very prescient name, Chris.
Yeah.
He says, hey, CNC, the talk of software price increases has me worried. Not a huge surprise, Mr. Worry. Yes, costs of development have gone up. So has the inclusion of multiple editions, microtransactions, battle passes, loot boxes, and surprise mechanics. Every year, games are coming out with less features, fewer features, Mr. Worry. Less and fewer. It's one of my pet peeves. And content so it can be resold to us bit by bit. I would gladly pay more upfront to get a complete game. However, I see no evidence of these practices going away. If next gen is $100 Canadian with its current trend, gaming should be dead. Jesus Christ, Mr. Worry. All right, so I feel like Mr. Worry's comment here, Chris, and I don't know if you agree with me. I feel like this comment is frozen in time. I feel like this is an argument from some years ago. Like we have loot boxes, and microtransactions and multiple editions, but this whole thing of like day one DLC and online passes and stuff like that doesn't happen anymore. That's not a thing anymore. Like that was a thing that happened and then went away.
Well, you still have season passes, but they have different structures now. They're not like the season passes of like Uncharted, like it's a very different type of model. I understand what he's saying. Here's the caveat right here, right? If your game has microtransactions and any kind of like in-game monetization, then your game shouldn't be $70. I think your game should be $60, arguably even just less than $60, if you're going to monetize your game in the way that microtransactions monetize games. Because I don't want to pay the price of a Last of Us or like a next generation like God of War game and then still be constantly nickeled and dimed after I've dropped like an absurd amount of money.
Right, but this is where you and I kind of diverge a little bit because to me, like microtransactions, especially like aesthetic ones, which is usually what are in games now, it's becoming more rare for paid games to have paid gamified microtransactions, as far as I can tell.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
but isn't that just optional? I mean, that's why this rings a little hollow to me. It's like, all right, you bought your $70. Let's say The Last of Us Factions is like a full-fledged multiplayer game. It's $70. You bought it for $70. You can play it online. No one's asking you to buy anything else, or they might be asking you. No one is forcing you to buy anything. Continue to go. So I don't know that argument resonates with me.
It's less about the game making you buy stuff and more about the game trying its best to sell you stuff regardless. I feel like it cheapens the experience in the same way that an ad popping up in the middle of a mobile game cheapens the experience. That's how you know that you're playing a shitty game, when an ad pops up or when something pops up that's made specifically or that's placed there specifically to trick you into buying something or to show something to you that way that they can get a return on investment on their advertising that they're pumping into the game. I get that it's like different because like ads on mobile phones are like completely like extraneous to the game and they don't really go back into the game's pockets in the same way because you're not buying stuff that's in the game. But I do still feel like it being sold something in real money in a real game that you've just paid a lot of money for, I feel like it just cheapens the experience. And beyond that, even when it is just cosmetic, it leads to this situation. And I've talked about this on Twitch a couple times where like, there's a reason why every single game looks like Fortnite now. And obviously I'm being hyperbolic, but there's a reason why a lot of games look like Fortnite now. And it's because Fortnite looks like whatever will grab people's attention to sell, because that game is full of non-gameplay affected monetized skins. And what happens when you monetize skins is, okay, well, let's say you have like a skin that's a purely cosmetic item. You buy it. All right. Well, how are you going to sell the next one? All right. Well, the next one needs to be more outrageous and more colorful and more bombastic and more zany. Okay. Well, then that trend continues, and then you have like a game that doesn't even look like the game it started as anymore. And then every game starts to look the same, and it just looks like a giant clown vomited on everything. It like, I don't think necessarily that it needs to be this way. I don't necessarily think that, you know, a game is doomed if it has microtransactions, but I do think that it does a detriment to both the feeling of how cheap the game can feel sometimes, and just the overall detriment to the way that a game looks and the visual style that a game is initially developed with, completely being shat on by the monetization that is brought in by, you know, cosmetic items or even some gameplay modifying items.
Yeah, you make a really salient overarching point that I think is relevant, which is, if you're making a game, a paid-for game, and then you're gamifying it on the back end with microtransactions, then what is the point of sale that's most important to you? Is it making the $60 up front, or is it doing like the FIFA Ultimate Team shit on the back end? And if that's the case, then why wouldn't FIFA Ultimate Team just be a free-to-play game where, you know, because they make like a shit ton of money, hundreds of millions of dollars on Ultimate Team and FIFA and in Madden.
Yeah.
So, but I guess their argument would be like, well, you also make hundreds of millions of dollars on selling the game regularly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's fair, but like, that's the kind of thing. It's like, if something is $30 and and has microtransactions in it, I'm not going to complain at all. I might even try it out. But like, if something's $70 to $60 and it's still got all this like bullshit in it, I'm probably not even going to look at it. And that's kind of the difference. That kind of strategy just makes it completely unpalatable to people that might otherwise actually be totally in on it.
Yeah, I think you make interesting points, and I guess I understand some of the concern. When I think about a season pass, for instance, and I think about a game that I play, like The Division 2 or Borderlands 3, I'm like, these are fucking huge games that give you so much content. Why do you feel entitled to get endless amounts of content for your $60 entry fee? I just see that's my major confusion. It's like, so you paid $60 for The Division 2, so you should just get everything they ever make for it now. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I understand it. In a live service game like that, I totally get the season pass model in Destiny. I totally get the season pass model in The Division. I've bought the season passes for Destiny because I like the game and I like to support it. Especially now that, you know, I know that money's not going to Activision. But there are some games that undoubtedly just don't, they just don't have legs in that same way. And the idea that they think, the presumptuousness of it, to assume that you are making something that can compete with all these other experiences that deserve this. I don't know. I just don't feel good about it. I just feel like it cheapens things.
Yeah, I think that the potentially exciting thing is what we've been talking about so long on this show, which is, I think $70 is going to be the peak price point now. I think that's pretty obvious. Maybe it'll go even a little higher. But like I said, we haven't had really disparity in pricing for AAA games since the cartridge era. And that had nothing to do with the games, but the chipsets inside them, and the limited amount that they can manufacture of all these games and how much more expensive they were to make. Gaming, even at $70 for a AAA game, is still cheaper than ever. Mm-hmm. And
yeah,
at $60, it's way cheaper than ever. At $70, it remains cheaper than ever. It basically remains static in inflationary money. So I just feel like we got to take these things on a case-by-case basis. If you're a free-to-play game like Fortnite, I'm not so offended by you having all sorts of microtransactions and all these things that extract money from the player base. I guess it is a little different if you go in and buy a game, but then you have to kind of judge things on a case-by-case basis there too, because like I said, games like Borderlands 3 and The Division 2 have really robust post-release content that should be paid for. If anything, I think you can argue that maybe the content's too expensive on a case-by-case basis. For instance, you're getting like 50 hours with Borderlands 3 for $60, and then you're paying like $10 for a few hours over and over again if you don't have the season pass for Borderlands 3 content. So I understand that argument a little bit more. But I know people don't like this gamer entitlement thing. I actually coined that term, so I'm not very proud of that. I coined that at IGN, and I'm not proud that's thrown around so much now. But it is a sense of entitlement to think that like you just get a static product and then you just get it forever, and no one's stopping you from playing the core content, right? Like no one's stopping you from buying. The Division 2 was $3 for a while, as people will recall. $3.
Oh yeah, totally.
And you can play the entire thing if you want for $3. But if you want to have these options, see, this is where I think that it comes back to like having a little bit of wherewithal as a consumer and say like, well, we won't contribute. Like Mr. Worry is saying here in his letter, he's obviously Canadian. He's saying if gaming goes up to $100 Canadian for games, then he's basically out. Well, do that. That if people do that en masse and are so offended by paying $70 instead of $60 for a game, even though we've been paying $60 for 15 years for video games, as the value of all money has eroded, then I think that like maybe the problem isn't the game. You know, maybe the problem is your own kind of interpretation of what you should be paying. It's like when I was a kid in the 90s and I would go to like a matinee on the weekends, it would cost like $6. You're not getting into a movie for fucking $6 anymore anywhere.
Yeah.
You know? And you have to kind of accept that that's the cost of doing business. Mm-hmm. It's just, the value of the dollar erodes. It's just the way it is.
One thing I will say is that if you got a game that has like cosmetic items that make everything look like a wacky, zany, like bullshit land, I would like the option to toggle that stuff from my perspective, at least. Turn that shit off because
sure.
Because my God, like some games out there look like just fan art. You know what I mean? Like it's just
totally.
like this multicolored mess because obviously every new skin has to be more eye-catching and more standoutish than the last in order for them to sell them, which is I think leads to the erosion of something that I care about very deeply, and I know that a lot of people don't necessarily give a shit about, which is like just the visual style of each individual title and how unique each individual title looks. And now, you know, everything's just Fortnite 2.
Yeah, you're right. We were making fun of games a week or two ago about there's like a couple of new games that were announced that are just indistinguishable from Fortnite. Just totally indistinguishable. Like I do this for a living, so does Chris. Like if you put, I don't know if Chris is any different than me in this regard, but if you put Fortnite and 3 other of these other games that look like Fortnite in front of me, I couldn't tell you what any of them are. I probably couldn't tell you which one was Fortnite, to be honest. So you're right. I mean, aesthetic quality and artistic merit is important. So we'll see how this all plays out. I think now that the first domino is fallen, we'll see others be able to talk about this. This frees up publishers to talk more freely and at least have other people to point to and say like, well, they're doing it too. I think the only thing that I'm a little worried about, Chris, is that if this is actually representative of the top end or not. This is an annualized sports game. And I'm wondering if 2K, when they get around to releasing like the BioShock game that's being developed at Cloud Chamber or Mafia 4 or whatever, if they're like, that's $80.
That's what I was thinking.
Then we're going to have a bigger conversation.
That's honestly what I was thinking was going to happen. I was like, well, this is a sports game. It's probably not necessarily the AAA price. I still honestly like it based on the reaction to how this goes. I think there's a very good chance that things might end up being 70 as a max point, but honestly, I really do think 80 is what it's going to be. I may very well be wrong. This is going to be an interesting time, especially this also speaks to really good timing on Microsoft's point to have introduced Game Pass so early, because that's going to be even more of a lure now.
Well, that's what I've been seeing a lot of people say, which I think is really relevant in the comments on my Twitter, or my tweet that I put out about this. People are saying like, well, this makes Game Pass, especially on Xbox, much more appealing. And this will make PlayStation Now more appealing too. My only concern there is like, well, I don't know that those prices aren't going up either. I think this is one of those Netflix-like situations or Amazon situations where you set a bug with someone for like Prime, or you set a bug for a Netflix subscription, and then they just increase the price and you become so comfortable with the service and you want it. Like Netflix, when I got it, was like $10 a month or something like that, or not even. Yeah. And it's almost twice that now. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to get rid of Netflix. So you got me. I'm a captive member of your audience. So we could see some weird shit play out here too. But I still would love the cartridge spirit to come back, in the sense of just allowing people to explore more. Like charging less than $60 for a game has a bad stigma now. It's very rare actually that a really great game comes out at a AAA quality like Ratchet and Clank, but is charged $40 or $50 or whatever for the game. So I wish that, along with this idea of raising prices, that again we explore the lowering of prices as well. But I don't know that that's necessarily realistic. So we'll see how this all shakes out. I'm sure a lot of people will have a lot of trepidation about this moving forward, but I just encourage people to listen. You got to keep a level head. You got to just look at things realistically. We've been paying $60 for so long. You're just acclimated to it. But think about that $60 is not the same as $60 was at the beginning of the PS3 and 360 eras. It's just not the same. At $80 a game, that outstrips inflation, and then that adds more profit. And then I can understand people being upset. But this is basically a swap for more money for inflation. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But we'll hear from you. I'm sure you'll have lots to say about this, positive or probably negative. So write into us, of course. Number 3, with the exception of last year's acquisition of Insomniac Games, Sony's roster of first-party studios has remained rather stagnant. In fact, there were 8 years in between Sony's acquisition of Sucker Punch in 2011 and Insomniac last year. And in that time, several internal studios, including Gorilla Cambridge, Zipper Interactive, Big, Evolution, and others were all shut down. So you may be pleased to learn that, according to Bloomberg, Sony is actively considering adding to its family yet again. Sony is apparently eyeing a Hong Kong holding company called Leiyou. I think that's how you say it. Leiyou. Maybe Leiyou?
Maybe.
A company that has courted other outside investors and buyers in recent years. Sony, though, is apparently motivated to make this deal work. Leiyou is valued at over $1 billion and has 5 studios under its direction, most notably Digital Extremes, which created and published the long-running and popular free-to-play game Warframe. Leiyou also owns Splash Damage, the team behind 2011's Brink, and more recently involved in all sorts of Gears of War-related projects, including the recently launched Gears Tactics. Leiyou also has voting shares with Certain Affinity, which has long worked as a support team for online games, including various Halo and Call of Duty games, as well as 2016's Doom. Perhaps most interestingly, though, it created Athlon Games in 2018 to publish Lord of the Rings video games, including an MMORPG, and also has long-running deals with toy maker Hasbro for Transformers and others. So this is interesting. It looks like Sony is pursuing this actively to make these guys part of their team, which would bring Digital Extremes on board, Splash Damage, which really has only worked with Xbox in the last 10 years after Brink, and Certain Affinity, which is really a support team, which Sony could probably use on their own games. So I was reading this and then I was like, oh, Athlon Games. And I went and read about them because I remember us, I think, talking about that here. Athlon Games is basically has the license to Lord of the Rings at this point. So that might be worth $1 billion alone if you have if Sony basically made Lord of the Rings exclusive PlayStation games with their own teams. What do you think about this possible purchase? This seems not as glamorous as I think some people might have hoped, but this is a way for them to acquire multiple teams at once.
Yeah, I could see it working. I think they're really eyeing Lord of the Rings more than anything, because I don't imagine that Brink was very good. Gears Tactics is actually pretty great, but I don't know if they're necessarily looking to make tactics games. Yeah, it's an interesting one for sure. The fact that I wonder how the Hasbro deal fits into this at all, or if that's even something that they care about.
It's exciting because, I don't know if they care about it. It's exciting to think about, though, because obviously Hasbro's licenses have bounced around. There were even didn't Platinum do a Transformers game that was published by Activision and shit like that? And so these things are bouncing around between people. But as a G.I. Joe fan, it's really exciting for Sony to potentially get Hasbro's licenses because they can make a G.I. Joe game, which would be awesome, especially because G.I. Joe is under a revival right now in 2020 with its new toy line. So there's a lot here, but I think Athlon Games with the Lord of the Rings stuff is probably really attractive to them. And I got to say, remember when we talked about Saber Interactive getting bought by THQ Nordic and how Saber Interactive doesn't really make their own games. They're really a port and support studio, and that would go a long way to allowing THQ Nordic to unleash their studios and have these guys basically just handle the technical stuff. Like they have a passion for that shit. It's kind of a similar thing here with Certain Affinity, where I feel like Blue Point Games would be the ideal studio for this, but maybe they don't want to be purchased. Certain Affinity can kind of fill this role. Certain Affinity has worked on a lot of big games. They just don't get a lot of shine for that because they're working in support roles. And Splash Damage, as I've said in the past, Splash Damage is like one of my favorite studio names. Brink was a Bethesda published game that people didn't really like, but they kind of went into the support role as well with the Gears franchise, especially. So they're kind of freed up because the Gears is kind of under the tutelage, as we know, of the Coalition and all this. And Digital Extremes is a pretty attractive property for them too, because Warframe is pretty big still. People still really love that game. Warframe was, as I recall, a PS4 launch game. So they've been on the platform forever. So I wouldn't be surprised. Apparently the Leiyou guys in Hong Kong are like really motivated. And so I wouldn't be surprised if this gets locked up if we find out in a few weeks that it's going to happen.
We'll see.
I don't think that this is a 1-for-1 replacing of some of these studios that have been closed, especially Zipper, Gorilla Cambridge, Liverpool, some really big storied studios. But this will do a nice job of filling in some cracks and crevices for them And maybe not the most glamorous purchase like Insomniac was, but we will find out. I still think they need to go after Blue Point. I still think that that's a studio that belongs with Sony more than many others, but we'll find out. But on number 4, let's talk more about acquisitions and new studios. Chinese mega company Tencent, which we talk about every fucking week on this show, is continuing its expansion into Western gaming markets, but this time it's not through acquisition. Instead, Tencent is opening a brand new AAA studio in California that will be working on a AAA next-gen project. The nature of this project is unknown, according to a report on Games Industry International, though Steve Martin, once a big shot at Rockstar, not that Steve Martin in games, once a big shot at Rockstar will be leading the studio. Martin most recently worked on both Grand Theft Auto 5 and Red Dead Redemption 2. I believe he was a producer on both of them. The studio has also begun hiring in earnest, as the report notes that other Rockstar vets, as well as folks from Respawn Entertainment, Insomniac Games, and others have already joined the team, one that is aiming for a so-called, quote, crunch-free, stress-free work environment, end quote. I don't like this whole emphasis on crunch-free, stress-free stuff. Why would you want to work? Like, what kind of game is made in a stress-free environment? I've never been free of stress in my work career ever. I just don't understand what this means. It seems like it's like this really PR marketing bullshit.
Yeah.
That's going to suggest that you're going to make a game in 3 years and 40-hour weeks or whatever. It's not going to happen. But nonetheless, what do you think about Tencent making their own studio, no longer acquiring others, but actually making their own American team?
Yeah, I mean, I would prefer that. I would just do that then. That's fine. I do think it's creepy. The term crunch-free, stress-free work environment coming from Tencent is really creepy. It's like really, there's something really Bioshocky about that, and I can't help but feel that way whenever Tencent is involved. But yeah, I would prefer definitely that they just open up a studio and stop aping others. That's more fair. I think I'm more open to that.
Yeah, I think that it's a little less sinister. You're right, because they're saying work. Stress-free environment is they throw you in like one of the communist Chinese concentration camps or something like that. So
yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you there. I'm sick of talking about Tencent, but we only keep talking about them because they keep expanding. And remember that this is a company that employs something like 50,000 people. I mean, this is a massive company, and some people look at it as a profoundly dangerous company as well. But nonetheless, they are expanding. They've seemed to have poached some Rockstar talent. And I don't mean that in the little R, I mean the big R Rockstar talent. And so we will see what they come up with. I assume we won't see their game until 2024 or so. Well, if it's a stress-free, crunch-free environment, we will probably never see their game, actually. But
yeah,
we'll find out. Number 5, website Bloomberg has reported that the long-rumored Harry Potter RPG is real and that it's aiming for a 2021 release on PlayStation 5 and other next-gen hardware. Interestingly, the game is being developed by Avalanche Software, not to be confused with Avalanche Studios, the guys behind Just Cause and other franchises, and is unsurprisingly being published by Warner Brothers Interactive Media, which, as we noted in recent weeks, is being shopped around itself to interested entities such as Electronic Arts and Activision. Avalanche Software is located in Utah and was actually part of Disney's internal set of teams from 2005 until 2017, at which point it was acquired by WB as an internal studio. The team is best known for its Disney Infinity franchise, as well as its 3D platform series from PS2 called Tak. Remember those games? And a bunch of other licensed products, mostly on behalf of Disney and Nickelodeon. This would be by far the biggest game it has ever attempted to make. Bloomberg has little else of substance to add to the existence of the game, though. It does note that with parent company AT&T shopping WB Interactive to suitors, an expensive project like this does risk being canceled before coming to light, similar to what happened to the likes of Star Wars 1313 when Disney acquired Lucas. Also notable is the recent controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling, a vocal feminist who has repeatedly made statements that some deem transphobic or trans-exclusive. This is interesting. We all knew this game was being developed, but Avalanche Software seems like a weird choice for this game. It seems like they were probably purchased with the idea of making this game, but I was looking at all the games they've made since the 90s, and they really have not made anything on the level of a Harry Potter role-playing game, a AAA licensed, they make licensed games, but like a AAA really big game. I'm not so confident that they have what it takes, but what do you think about this rumor and kind of the confirmation that this game is indeed real for a 2021 PS5 release?
This game's getting canceled, dude. This game is I have no doubt about it. Like I not even necessarily because of J.K. Rowling being controversial. I just think it's simply way too late for this. And coming from, like you said, Avalanche Software, that doesn't really deem a lot of confidence. The fact that there's even a chance that it could get canceled leads me to believe that it absolutely will be. Because I think whoever is acquiring it will probably look at it and be like, either this is not coming out in its current state, or this is being repurposed into something else. Because we haven't seen anything about this thing, and we've known about it for how long?
Yeah. I mean, this game's been rumored for years, and presumably, so Disney jettisoned Avalanche in 2017, so you have to presume this game has been in development for at least 3 years, probably longer. There was footage of it leaked, as you might recall, in 2018, when people started getting kind of the first feel of what this game could be. When I saw Avalanche was making, I was like, oh, Avalanche is making, like the real Avalanche. And I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like they're capable of doing it. They've made big games before, many big games before. So, but it's not that Avalanche. And well, yeah, the Bloomberg article does note that games this late in development, especially licensed games, do have a tendency to get canceled. And that happened to Star Wars 1313. I mean, Star Wars 1313 was well on its way when it got canceled. It was pretty close to being done. And I know people that worked on that game, and they talk about it really painfully. But as far as J.K. Rowling, what do you make of her? I don't know. I don't want to get too deep into this, but I feel like what she's saying in her tweets and in her letter that she wrote, and people can go read about it. I'm not going to get too far into it. I don't feel like it's really being accurately represented. Like, I don't think it's as controversial as people are making it out to be. She's basically just speaking at saying, like, I support trans people, but there are also women, and they're not trans women and women are not necessarily, or don't necessarily share all of the same experiences. And let's not erase women in this pursuit of inclusivity. We can be both. We can be both inclusive and then recognize the genders as they are and what they go through and all that kind of stuff. And when I read that stuff because I saw the controversy about it, Chris, and then I went and I was like, oh, what the fuck did she say? Like, what did J.K. Rowling say? And I read it and I'm like, this doesn't seem that crazy to me. Like in terms of it might be a controversial opinion. It might not be an opinion you or I agree with in its entirety, but it seemed pretty tame compared to the way people were reacting to it. Do you agree or do you disagree? I'll
be real. I haven't checked out like exactly what she said, but based on how you're describing it, I don't imagine that that's all that complicated or that it doesn't seem that controversial to me. Yeah, I don't know. I think, does she have like a history of like saying crazy shit?
Yeah, she has a history of saying a lot of stuff about transgender people, and I understand it's a sensitive topic. It's a topic we need to be more progressive on in many ways, I think. And I've said for a long time, I feel like transgender people, now that like gay marriage is legalized in the United States and all this through the Supreme Court several years ago, I always felt like trans rights was going to be the next civil rights movement. And I get it. Because her whole thing started where it was like, there was a tweet from some entity where they were saying like, people who menstruate. That's like what they said, their term, people who menstruate. And she was like, damn, I think there's a word for people who menstruate. That's what she said.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I understand what you mean. I mean, I get it. Like, you don't want to dehumanize or take away the agency of a woman because someone wants to identify as a woman. It doesn't mean that you can't identify as a woman. It doesn't mean that we don't treat you societally as a woman. So it's a really sticky, it's like a minefield. I feel like I'm even treading on dangerous ground just talking about it. But in looking at what J.K. Rowling said, I was like, I don't know, especially when she wrote this letter kind of clarifying her stance. I'm like, I don't find this very offensive. And I consider myself, maybe people would disagree. I don't know why you would, but I consider myself an ally of trans people. I think that trans people have every right to live their lives to their specifications. Yeah. But I just think, we're not a political podcast. I don't want to get too far down that, but I do think the controversy with J.K. Rowling is going to play a part in this game having some difficulty. And it's funny because she's writing all these new books now, not like the Wizarding World of Harry Potter or whatever it is, or not the Wizarding World, but the Fantastic Beasts. And then the stuff she does under that pen name and she's doing like this new children's anthology or whatever. Uh-huh. And people at the publishing house were actually complaining about having to work on her books. And the publishing house made a move, which you do not see very often, which they basically said, too bad. Like, you can disagree with her, but we're not having any, like, if you don't want to work on our books, you're fired. And so there are people that are putting their foot down, and I think J.K. Rowling is uncancelable. She's a billionaire. Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why she's comfortable saying this stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think anybody working on a J.K. Rowling property has more to lose by dropping that deal than J.K. Rowling has. You know, J.K. Rowling doesn't need anything. Like she's fine, but like if you had the opportunity to work on a J.K. Rowling property, you're probably gonna want to take it.
Definitely. And so that was, I forget the name of the publishing house, but I thought that was really interesting. And then the Bloomberg article noted, and I don't know, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, so I don't know much about her, but she's apparently very hands-on with like everything that is Harry Potter related. And apparently she has something to do with the game. She's not like involved in the day-to-day, but she is helping produce this game in some way. And so people at Avalanche are now complaining about her comments and all of this. And I'm like, this seems like it's not going to end up very well, but we'll see what happens. I'd love for it to come out. I'd love for something to capture my imagination with Harry Potter, because I did read the first 3 books through Prisoner of Azkaban when I was younger, and I liked them. I just didn't read the rest of them. I think I only saw like the first movie. So I would like for something to capture my imagination. It's very similar to how the South Park games captured my imagination and made me go back and watch a lot of South Park that I missed and ended up really loving it. I mean, they're very different licenses, but those 2 role-playing games from Obsidian and Ubisoft really thrust me into wanting to, like, I loved those games. And I was like, wow, South Park is so great. So it would be cool to have something like Harry Potter related that would capture me in that same way.
Yeah. I feel like a Harry Potter game, though, runs the risk of having like the Avengers issue where like we're all so familiar with what Harry Potter is, especially from like the movies and like how these characters are supposed to look. That I wonder if like they could, I wonder if they have the licenses to use like Emma Watson and Daniel Radcliffe and Rupert Grint and all those actors and what's Snape again? Oh my God, Alan Rickman.
Oh, Alan Rickman. Hello, Alan Rickman. This is Alan Rickman.
It's just, I wonder. I don't know. I feel like it could end up being like a really uncanny valley kind of experience. Like even if it is made pretty well.
I'm curious how this all plays out. It's complicated. There's like 4 dimensions to this.
Yeah.
With the J.K. Rowling, let's call it the J.K. Rowling exponent. And so, yeah, people can write in and let me know. I mean, am I off base on J.K. Rowling? Is she more sinister than I realize? Am I misreading things or what? I mean, let me know. I mean, it seems from what I'm reading online, outside of like the Twitterati, as it were, no one's offended by this.
Yeah.
In the slightest. But I'm not in the Harry Potter fandom, and I know that that's a really substantial fandom. So yeah, hit us up and let us know what you think. Number 6, Sony has revealed the free PlayStation Plus games for the month of July, and by the time you hear this, they may already be available to you to download free of charge, so long as your PS Plus account is active. The specific dates are July 7th through August 3rd. Remember, as always, to add these games to your download list, even if you don't intend on playing them now, as you'll have the option to play them later if you change your mind. For starters, to prepare for the return of the NBA season and the subsequent start of the NBA season for 2020 and 2021, NBA 2K20 will be free. Additionally, Crystal Dynamics' Rise of the Tomb Raider, which first came to Xbox 360 and Xbox One in 2015 and later came to PS4 in 2016, will also be free. And finally, the 2019 PS4 exclusive Erica, described as a, quote, feature-length cinematic experience, end quote, will also be free, a 3rd game to celebrate 10 full years of PlayStation Plus. I need to play that Erica game. This is a good excuse because it's supposed to be pretty good. PS Plus launched back in June of 2010, and it was extremely controversial and divisive for several years before truly finding its footing. If you're curious, Wipeout HD on PS3 was the very first free game offered via PS Plus, a Chris game. The most popular free games in 10 years are in order, so this is by download. Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, Sonic Forces, Shadow of the Colossus, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, and Destiny. I put Destiny 3, but it's Destiny 2. Destiny 3 doesn't exist. And the most played multiplayer games, relevant since PS Plus is required to play online with PS4, are in order: Grand Theft Auto 5, Rainbow Six Siege, Call of Duty Black Ops 3, Destiny, and Call of Duty Black Ops 4. I'll never forget how controversial PlayStation Plus was. I was a very early and vocal supporter of it. I used to write about it on IGN all the time.
Yeah.
I used to get shit on constantly for liking PS Plus, but they really did figure out a way to make it work, and I think it's great.
Yeah,
it's totally worth it.
That was an interesting time. I remember that too, because I remember constantly. What is it? There would be, because I was playing on 360 at the time, and everybody. I had some friends on PlayStation 2. It's like, I can't believe you pay for good servers and and like all that stuff. It's like, yeah, of course. What do you mean? And then when that happened, I remember being real snide.
Yeah, like, you earned it. You earned it, man. Because if folks don't remember or just unaware, online on PS3 was free. You didn't have to pay to play online on PS3. But when PS4 came around, they made the online functionality of PS4 locked behind PlayStation Plus, and that really changed everyone's tune. on that. That seemed totally reasonable to me, especially because they didn't increase the price. I think they've only increased the price of Plus like once since it launched, and you could often find it really severely discounted. If you buy like a year at a time during a flash sale, you can get it for like $30. So I just think based on the free games alone, nonetheless, the online functionality, I think it's been really great. But originally it started as like you get like early access to games and like sales and all that. And they still do that. But now it's really become much more about the free games and the online functionality. So happy 10 years to PlayStation Plus. I can't believe it's 10 years old. That makes me feel old as shit. I feel like I was just writing about it. All right. By the way, that's where we get our name of our show, by the way.
Yeah.
Sacred Symbols Plus. Number 7, Media Molecule's long in development game Dreams is getting its promised PSVR support, and it's happening rather soon. You can download the patch that will activate PSVR functionality on July 22nd. Word comes by way of a PlayStation blog post from Media Molecule itself, which notes that the update will be free for all owners of the game, and that players will be able to create PSVR projects with the seamless set of tools available for your more standard variety of games, though there will be PSVR-centric toolsets and tutorials to help guide you. Media Molecule has also wisely opted to include some baked-in PSVR experiences for players to mess around with, so everyone can see what the best of the best are capable of within Dreams. Dreams launched on PlayStation 4 in its final form on February 14th earlier this year, but was released into a paid beta in 2019 and was in development for the better part of 8 years before launch. The game hasn't sold well, but does have a hardcore fan base of creators and players, and it seems Media Molecule intends on continuing support for the project well into the future. Jacob Childers wrote into us, Chris, on Patreon. He says, "What's up, you filthy animals? Dreams is coming to PlayStation VR. Do you think this is the shot in the arm the game needs? Thanks, guys." What do you say, Chris?
No. No. PSVR is so it's such a niche in and of itself. This isn't gonna amount to much of a shot in the arm for anybody. I think it's gonna be an interesting thing for people to play around with who are already there. But I don't know if it's not a shot in the arm. It's more like I feel like it's more like putting the last little Lego piece on your little on your Lego Island thing, where it's like, it's finished. I got the flag up on the castle. You know, it's finished now.
Right.
You know, it's got full functionality, but I don't know if it's a shot in the arm.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, you're right. It's so niche that it can't possibly be a shot in the arm. I think the problem with PSVR is the hardcore audience that's already most engaged with PlayStation and most engaged with Dreams, or potentially so, has PSVR. And so you're not going to find new audiences. I don't think that that's going to happen. I still think Dreams was a bad idea. I think let me back up. I think Dreams was an ill-conceived idea. I think it's a nice product and people like it, but I just said it from the beginning. This game has no chance. And I don't think these little incremental things are going to save it. I think that the biggest, I got to say, Chris, like, because we talked about it, it's coming to PC. It's obviously going to come to PS5. But I think the best way to save Dreams and to maybe save Media Molecule long-term is to get this thing on everything. And maybe this would be a good foray for Sony to start investigating publishing its games on Nintendo and Microsoft's platforms. Yeah. If you just do it with Dreams, like I actually really love that idea. And maybe that would give Dreams the requisite player base it needs to thrive, because I haven't turned it on in a long time, but there are not many people playing it. And they have that thing at the splash screen where it says how many people are online. And I remember like a week after it came out, it was like 3,000. And I'm like, dude, that's horrible. You know, that's hard. There are 110 million PS4s, 115 million. You can't be having 3,000 people playing your game at one time when it just came out. If you're a AAA console exclusive studio, I feel bad for them. By the way, do you know the name Abby Heppy or whatever? Abby Heppy, is that her name?
Abby Heppy.
Yeah, let me look to make sure I'm getting this name right. She's the community manager of Media Molecule. I'm only asking because she was at one time, I remember, because I met her at Gamescom in Germany once. She's the voice of Titanfall, and she was the community manager of Titanfall.
What does that mean? The voice of Titan? What does that mean?
You know, like how it's like, T minus whatever for Titanfall. The
really?
Woman's voice? Yeah. Media
What
Molecule.
the hell? Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Abby Heppy, Heppee. Yeah, I think I met her. Yeah, ex-Respawn. And I remember having a really awkward conversation with her at Gamescom. So I was hanging out with Shaban Reddy and others from Media Molecule after a day at Gamescom. We were having drinks at a bar, and I had just met Abby. It was the first time. She's very nice, but I remember saying something. She was like, "Oh, did you see Titanfall?" Because they were showing it there, and I'm like, "Yeah, I saw it, but I didn't get a chance to play it. I cover PlayStation for IGN." And she's like, and she said, "So?" And that's what I remember about my interaction with her.
That's good.
But yeah, she's as I recall, she is the voice of Titanfall, whatever that means, and yeah, worked at Respawn. So it looks like she lives in I'm looking at her Twitter feed now. It looks like she lives in Guildford, which is where Media Molecule is. So it looks like maybe the seeds were set at that inauspicious meeting where she ended up working for them. But I'll never forget that about her, because I was kind of embarrassed. I was like, well, you asked me a question and I'm answering you. Like, I'm here to see games, and I cover PlayStation. I'm not going to go see fucking Titanfall. You know, I don't have time for that. But nonetheless, weird the things we remember. That was 6 years ago, almost to the month. Number 8. Sony has revealed a slew of new indie games on the PlayStation blog, perhaps trying to reignite its relationships with independent developers that it once bragged about regularly, but not in recent years. The post was written by Shuhei Yoshida, who used to be in charge of Sony's first-party studios and has more recently been placed in charge of Sony's lackluster but once very proud and robust indie initiatives. In addition to confirming that a new indie game will join PlayStation Now's catalog each and every month moving forward, Yoshida also revealed that the following 10 games are coming to either PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, or both. Real-time action game Worms Rumble is coming to both PS4 and PS5 later in 2020. Co-op adventure RPG Haven is coming to PS4 and PS5 at an unknown point in the future. Action puzzler Cardo is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in the future. Fast-moving platform Recompile is coming to PS5 likely in 2020. Narrative adventure game Where the Heart is coming to PS4 late in 2020. That seems to be the one that they're pushing the hardest. Puzzler Maquette is coming to PlayStation platforms at an unknown point in time, though it doesn't make clear which platforms. Action platformer Fist, Forged in Shadow Torch, is coming to PlayStation 4 at an unknown point in the future. I like that name. Physics-based game Heavenly Bodies is coming to both PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 at an unknown point in the future. And mysterious adventure game Creeks is coming to PS4 later this summer. So if anyone wants to go to PlayStation blog, blog.us.playstation.com, there's trailers and write-ups for each one of these, like extensive coverage of all of these games. So they're not just throwaway announcements. These are games Sony's actually getting behind with the help of Shuhei Yoshida. So go check those out. We got a lot of letters about this, actually. Liam Jackson wrote into us on Patreon and says, hello, CNC. PlayStation has just announced their new indie highlight initiative, and I think it is an excellent way to market games that would otherwise go unnoticed. Something interesting in the blog post from PlayStation themselves is the acknowledgement of how stale and hampered AAA games are becoming on the corporate side of things. What are your thoughts on a major AAA developer outright stating that this is the case? And do you think pressure like from Sony themselves could drive more creativity in major studios if it is continued in such an explicit manner? Chris, I was really pleased to see this from Shuhei Yoshida. I know that this was his charge when she was kind of removed from being the head of first party and Herman Holst from Guerrilla took over. He has a really good connection with video game developers. I've watched him in action for many years in person, and I've known him. I've had dinner with him and talked to him a lot and had a lot of candid conversations, and he really knows games. I mean, this is the guy that produced and helped create a lot of big PlayStation games early on, including everyone's beloved The Legend of Dragoon.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about them saying themselves, and he does say, and I'll bring up the quote, I'll read it to you in a moment, but he does bring up that things are getting stale and tired and a little dangerous in that space and in the AAA space, and that they need to kind of look inward. And I think this is a nice way for them to kind of showcase big games. And he says in this quote, the indie community is increasingly important for the future of the video game industry, as AAA game development has grown so financially demanding that big companies are finding it harder to take risks to invest in new concepts that may or may not work. We trust indie developers with strong vision will continue to bring ideas that have never been tried before, creating whole new genres of games and advancing the art and meaning of video games. PlayStation has always embraced games with completely new concepts, like Parappa the Rapper, Katamari Damacy, Little Big Planet, and Journey, and we look forward to seeing what surprising new ideas come next. So how do you feel about that separation and about Sony kind of acknowledging it themselves?
I think it's good. I feel like I used to get a lot of heat for saying this, but so it's kind of gratifying to hear it come from like just straight up Shuhei Yoshida. It's a nice feeling. But yeah, I mean, I think he's right. Like I think generally speaking, the more you have writing on your project and the more eyes you have on you, the less risks you're willing to take and the more safe you're willing to be to ensure that you really stick the landing. And I feel like indie developers just don't have that. Indie developers make whatever the hell they want. There's this great, there's this insane looking game, Maneater, where you play as like a shark.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, that came out recently.
I want to play that so bad because it's
supposed to be great.
Because it's just such an insane... Just like no big studio is going to make that. It really is just like a bunch of people in an office or like in an apartment probably being like, hey, you know what would be wild? and then they just did it. Like, I love that, and I like that Shuhei is really kind of shining a light on that, and I think he's totally right.
Yeah, I think he's right too, and I think that knowing Sony and how they work so well internally, they clear everything they say through so many layers of PR and stuff. This was a thing that they wanted to say. This was a message that they wanted to put out there. This wasn't something that Shuhei Yoshida just went rogue and posted on the PlayStation blog. So I find that interesting too, because they're some of the biggest investors in AAA games. They, The Last of Us Part 2 is a $150 million game. It's a ridiculously expensive game to make. And they're saying that that's a problem. And so I do appreciate the candor. And Sony had such a proud heritage with indies, PlayStation Hearts indies and all that kind of stuff. And they had a big presence at GDC, and they were getting everyone on Vita and all that kind of stuff. And they kind of lost the plot. And as I've said on the show in the past, I know so many indie game devs, and I've heard from a lot of them, including big, I won't say anyone in particular, but big names, developers you would know that made games we would talk about and understand and have played. And they were like, Sony doesn't really pay attention to us anymore. They don't really give a shit about us anymore. And this seems like maybe it will ameliorate that problem a little bit. So I will look forward to seeing how this all plays out. Anu Sakani wrote into us and said, hello, C Squared. The PlayStation Indies Initiative was just announced today via the PlayStation blog by Shuhei Yoshida. And while it seems like a noble project, I can't help but think back to the 2012 and 2013 days when PS Hearts Indies was plastered all over PS4 marketing, only for it to seemingly die out midway through the generation, with Nintendo capturing indie devs' hearts with the Switch and Sony neglecting its indie partners. Do you think we're looking at a repeat of this last generation, or will this project have longer legs? As always, keep up the great work. You guys made my days in quarantine infinitely more enjoyable. Thank you, Anu, for your letter. Chris, do you think that they'll stick this time? Because he is right. They did have this. They talked a big game, Sony, for a long time, and they actually had a lot of events and stuff. This is where I discovered games like Mercenary Kings and all that stuff, which was awesome. And then they just stopped, and they stopped paying attention. I just don't think they were seeing the returns that they were hoping that they were going to see. It's important to remember that Sony had a thing called Pub Fund, where they would actually fund games for people. So this is like where Guacamelee came from and some other games.
Yeah.
And then they would get paid back. It was like a loan, an interest-free loan in exchange for the game and exclusivity for a period of time. And I think they just weren't seeing the returns they wanted to see on that. So it seems like they're not necessarily financially invested in these games. They're just trying to showcase them. And so from my point of view, it seems like it has the ability to last infinitely longer because they don't have to worry about the bottom line. They're just trying to get people's eyes on these. But what do you think?
Yeah, I agree too, but I also think it has longer legs just because Shuhei is so directly involved. I don't think that they would be so quick to just sort of oust him from his previous position, put him in a new position, and then kind of make that position irrelevant. I think that in and of itself is a pretty good indication that it's possibly something that will stay for at least a decent amount of time. Previously, like the PS Heart Indies thing was even back then when I saw it, and like I had so little understanding of like PlayStation as an ecosystem or like the business side of Sony. Even back then, I kind of knew that was just kind of PR, just a horse shit, because it just felt that way too. It felt very pandery, and it felt very like, oh, look at we're here, we hear you, but it didn't really get that across at all, outside of just telling people that it was true. This feels a lot more different, and the candidness by which this is sort of, coming out into the public consciousness, I feel like bodes pretty well.
Well, I think you make a really valid and interesting point too in regards to Shuhei, because I don't know the internal workings of what happens here, and corporate shit is always obfuscated. Like you never really know like what's happening for what reason, but it's pretty clear Shuhei Yoshida was demoted. I don't know for what reason that happened. I don't know if it's because of the decentralized nature of getting things out of Japan and bringing them to the States, although Herman Holst works out of Europe, so I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Jim Ryan's also European. So I don't know exactly what was going on there. It's also interesting because he seemed to have greenlit some pretty awesome first-party games like The Last of Us Part 2 and Uncharted 4 and Horizon and Days Gone and whatever the case might be. So I feel like Shuhei Yoshida, his gravitas is going to make or break this because he can use his name. He's like a cult hero, like a cult figure in PlayStation fandom. And so I think his involvement is one thing, but his active involvement and putting his face on it and trying to be as active as possible is another thing. And so I think it's really going to hinge on him because he really does have an eye for this stuff. I'm telling you, I've spoken to so many people and gone to dinner with so many people in the industry. And there are people that are working in games that don't know fucking anything, like straight up don't know anything. And Shuhei Yoshida knows games inside and out, north, south, left, right, right? Like he knows them. And having someone like him go into your indie studio and whatever country and walk in and try to get you on PlayStation is going to be a really powerful tool. And so maybe it was a pretty shrewd move to promote Herman Holst, remove him from Guerrilla, although we don't really know how that's going to work for Guerrilla now because he's not there anymore. But then have Shuhei Yoshida involved with getting these indie games. So I think you can hit it from both sides because Herman Holst is a really great mind in games too. So they have, at the very least, we know they have some pretty good people working on some pretty good projects.
Yeah.
Rahul wrote into us and said, hey, CNC, long time, first time. PlayStation has announced this week the Indie Initiative led by Shuhei Yoshida and their goals for highlighting and promoting quality indie games that would otherwise get buried in a highly saturated and competitive market. Do you guys think this is a good first step for game curation that Colin especially has long advocated for as a great way to provide much needed visibility to hidden gems in a sea of mediocrity? So what do you think about this in terms of curation, Chris? Do you think we can read into these PlayStation blog games being elevated there with posts and trailers that they'll then spotlight them on the store? It's kind of what we were talking about on the last episode, where people were saying, like, should there be different verticals where you just know exactly what you're looking for? Will it allow people to find these games better? Do you think that there's some sort of backdoor into that initiative here?
I don't think so. I think re-establishing the layout of the store and just sort of making that kind of a tweak is a little bit in the software realm. And if there's anything that I've learned being a part of this ecosystem for a while, it's that software isn't necessarily the strong suit of Sony, and I don't imagine that there would be a revision of the store that would allow these to have a stronger placement in the store than they otherwise would on other platforms or even in an ideal platform. I think this is still going to be something that's relatively off-site and something that they're going to probably try to highlight via social media. Maybe you'll see them like given like a slot in like the tiles on the PlayStation Store, but I don't foresee this leading to any real changes in the way that the store is laid out or any real change in the way that they're pushed on the network itself. I would like that to be the case. I very much doubt it.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if they can keep these games staggered from each other, most of them don't have release dates yet. I think the first one comes out in August. And if they can keep them apart from each other and really get behind them and promote them, then it would be cool. It would be totally reasonable, like you said, with one of the tiles on the PlayStation Store to just always have one of those as one of the big indie games that they're trying to get out there.
Yeah.
I just don't know what their motivation is, because having not I don't know for sure. Most of these games are already out on other platforms, like on PC and stuff, I think. Or like have been announced for other platforms. And so Sony seemingly not having a financial stake in these games, I don't know like what their motivation is to sell them, because with Pub Fund, they were trying to make their money back and populate their platforms. And that was during PS3 and Vita's heyday too. With this, I don't know. It would be cool to see something more concerted on their part. And I think you're right, with firmware being necessary to update the store, and they're just not very quick with that. I think we're gonna have to wait until PS5 to see what the store has in whole. Since I'm trying to keep my expectations really low for this, because I want something so badly to be like Steam, and I just know it's just not gonna happen. It would be nice if it did, but it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's a real shame. And also, just like the PlayStation 4 dashboard or cross media bar. Just hasn't really changed much at all, and I think that's probably not necessarily because I don't think that's necessarily because they think they had it right the first time. I just genuinely think that they don't really know how to do it without kind of toppling the house of cards in any real substantial way. I really hope that they do something like the Summer of Arcade back on 360 in the late 2000s, because that was a great way to highlight indie games and big indie projects. Spacing them out appropriately and then giving them their own time to shine. That would be the ideal way to go about it, but I don't know, we'll see. Yeah,
give them room to breathe. That's the big thing. Like, give them a chance. Not all these games are going to be hits, but you just give them a chance and go from there. I think that they have to do that. Otherwise they might as well not even bother. They might as well just cancel all these games on PlayStation and not even release them. Number 9. In light of recent allegations of sexual harassment, assault, and other impropriety rocking the games industry, publisher/developer Ubisoft is planning to make some changes. Word comes by way of a blog post from Ubisoft's longtime CEO, Yves Guillemot, who actually wrote the post to his employees first before making it public to all. I don't know if they intended on making this public, by the way, or the email leaked, so they made it public. But anyway, he says he writes in part, quote, "The situations that some of you have experienced or witnessed are absolutely not acceptable. No one should ever feel harassed or disrespected at work. And the types of inappropriate behavior we have recently learned about cannot and will not be tolerated," end quote. As a result, he later continues, quote, "I have decided to revise the composition of the editorial department," so those are the leaders basically of the different teams, "transform our human resources processes, and improve the accountability of all managers on these subjects. We are not looking for a quick fix, but rather a structural shift at Ubisoft that fully aligns with our values," end quote. Guillemot therefore informed his team that he is instituting someone to head up these changes, that there will be so-called employee listening sessions across all of its studios and entities. They'll institute a global employee survey, continue to investigate all allegations, and more. A report from publication Bloomberg notes that some of what Ubisoft itself is dealing with, at least two of its marquee vice presidents, Tommy Francois and Maxime Balland, are both on administrative leave as multiple claims against each man are investigated. So this keeps happening, man. I mean, there's just, you would think that it's going to stop at some point, but it just keeps getting worse and worse for all these entities. And I noticed, I'm not in the Smash Brothers community, obviously, but there was like a big controversy that came out like late last night in that community.
Yeah.
In the fighting game community, with some allegations there. And it's weird because I think some of these problems are getting pretty serious at Ubisoft specifically, because we talked about the Assassin's Creed guy and how he cheated on his wife, although I don't know that that's really like a crime. It's definitely not a crime. It's wrong, but it's not a crime. But there was accusations made against one of the community managers, I think, of the Watch Dogs brand, who I had never met or even heard of. And I went to investigate it. And I don't know if it's true or not. I don't know if he's guilty or not. We don't know any of that. But I went to investigate it and he blocked me on Twitter. So I was like, well, thanks, because it seems like you might be a complete fucking scumbag. Yeah. So maybe you did me a huge favor there, but there's not too much more to say about this. I just wanted to throw that out there. This actually broke right before we started recording, so I wanted to include it in the show. Do you have anything to say about this, or?
No, I feel like this is gonna happen. It's probably gonna keep happening, honestly. So we'll just see how this goes.
Yeah, I want to see like where it ends and what everything looks like after the fallout.
Yeah.
So we can start to like mend whatever's going on in this industry. Although it's happening in all industries, it's happening in comics, it's happening in like young adult novels, it's happening in movies. So it's not just exclusive to games. And it's unfortunate that it's not exclusive to games, because that just means that it is victimizing more and more people.
Yeah. It's just very pervasive.
Yeah, it's horrible. I mean, it's horrible. Number 10, speaking of Ubisoft, there's some good news. The publisher has announced an all-new game that kind of sort of leaked in recent days called Hyperscape. Hyperscape is being developed by internal Ubisoft team, Ubisoft Montreal, the team that created Assassin's Creed 2, 3, Unity, Black Flag, Origins, and the soon-to-be-released Valhalla, as well as Far Cry 3, 4, Primal, and 5, the Shaun White snowboarding games Watch Dogs 1 and 2, Rainbow Six Siege, For Honor, and others. And interestingly, it's a free-to-play FPS, something new in Ubisoft's arsenal. Unfortunately, it's yet another Battle Royale game, though Hyperscape's twist is that 100 players are split into 3 teams. The game has an intimate connection to the streaming service Twitch, giving viewers a modicum of control over the match they're watching, and it's set to come to current-gen platforms, including PlayStation 4, where the game will enjoy cross-platform play and progression. It appears Ubisoft is working on a staggered release for the game, beginning with tech tests and betas, though it may be available in its final form by the end of the summer. There's no word on a PlayStation 5 release for the game, though it should be natively backwards compatible with Sony's new hardware. Ian Savage wrote in and said, "Hey, sweet tasty boys. I know both of you have talked about the persistent battle royales and looter shooters are often a race to the bottom as far as quality goes. But have either of you given Hunt Showdown a play? It has cross-play with Xbox One and PS4, an oppressive survival horror atmosphere, a near Bloodborne aesthetic, and the sharp difficulty curve of a Souls game all wrapped up in an FPS. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on the game." And then he says, "Keep making," and that's it. Have you played this Hunt Showdown game? It's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah, like this is Crytek, right? Or oh my god.
I think it is a Crytek game. I'll look for you, but go ahead.
Yeah. They they actually sent me a code like out of nowhere, and I never installed it because I wasn't. This is one of those games that's like very, very cool, and I appreciate it and I support it, but I not only do I not like battle royales, the Bloodborne aesthetic is something that I find totally okay. I don't like the sharp difficulty curve of Souls games, and I very highly doubt that it's an FPS that has better FPS mechanics than the FPSs that I already play. So it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know if I'm gonna really be that interested in it. If I have somebody to go in with, I imagine I would like it, but I've heard that it's a pretty demanding game. I've heard that it's a very hardcore game, and I feel like if you're not in it already, you're probably just going to get mopped up and just screwed over. So, it's a game that I can appreciate from afar. I don't really have any intent of delving further into it.
Yeah, it came to PS4 actually pretty late. It was on PC and Xbox One last year, and then it came to PS4 earlier this year. It is a Crytek game. It's on CryEngine 5. And I've heard good things about it. It's certainly not my type of game. But what do you think about this Ubisoft announcement for Hyperscape? Did you look at any of this stuff? I just can't believe we're getting another one of these games. Like, how many more of these games are we getting?
Yeah, it's too much, man. I appreciate the twist. I like the thought of like 3 big teams coming after each other, but just like this genre just needs to stop. As a genre, this game cannot continue. Like I'm sick of it. If you want to put like a battle royale in a game that is already a game on itself, you have like, hey, here's a campaign, here's a multiplayer suite, and by the way, if you want, here's a free-to-play battle royale game to get you kind of into the sandbox and into the gameplay styles, and maybe if you like it enough, maybe you'll give the campaign and multiplayer a try. That's totally fine, but selling a game mode as a genre is just so... I just don't find enough value in that to justify spending the money or the time on it.
Yeah, I just don't know. I just don't get it. I don't know what everyone is trying to do here. And it's especially peculiar for Ubisoft because they haven't been involved in this, and they make games as a service, and they do it pretty well, like a paid game as a service, whether it's Rainbow Six Siege or whether it's The Division 2 and others, as well as their big, robust single player games. So these things are all going to kill each other. And so maybe it's a battle royale of its own, a meta battle royale, as it were. Number 11, some new sales figures of a few notable games have been revealed. Website Gamatsu reports that Motion Twin's randomly generated Metroidvania game Dead Cells has now surpassed 3 million units sold, while the website reports that Bandai Namco's flight sim Ace Combat 7 Skies Unknown has surpassed 2 million units sold. Dead Cells first came to PS4 in 2018, while Ace Combat 7 launched on the console in early 2019. And website Push Square reports that the well-received action-adventure game A Plague Tale: Innocence, which came out in 2019 from Asobo Studio, has surpassed 1 million units sold. So some nice money being made there. I'm especially interested in Motion Twin because they are an employee-owned studio.
Yeah.
And so they are all millionaires now, I think, which is great for them.
Pretty good.
Number 12, some new video game-related TV shows are in the works. The biggest of the bunch is a Fallout TV show based on the Bethesda-owned open-world RPG series that last saw a mainline release in 2015 with Fallout 4, though the online-centric Fallout 76 launched since. Amazon is developing this show according to a report on Variety, and it's being headed up by none other than Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, the married couple responsible for bringing Westworld to HBO. Westworld, of course, originally being an IP created in the 70s by Jurassic Park writer Michael Crichton. Jonathan Nolan is the brother of famous filmmaker Christopher Nolan, and Jonathan Nolan was the screenwriter for many of his brother's films, including Memento, the Batman trilogy, and Interstellar, one of my favorite movies of all time. Variety notes that the pair is looking to keep Fallout grounded in the game universe with grit and violence, coupled with its B-movie aesthetic and occasional humor. Naturally, Bethesda Softworks and Bethesda Game Studios will co-produce the project, with Fallout creative director Todd Howard taking a central role. The other show is a bit of a surprise, also reported by Variety. Disco Elysium is being developed as a TV series, the RPG from studio ZAUM. The writer of Disco Elysium, Robert Kurvitz, doesn't seem to be playing a role, as Disco Elysium was based upon a story he created surrounding what was originally a tabletop RPG. Disco Elysium, the video game, came to PC in 2019 and PS4 in 2020. A production company called DJ2 Entertainment is leading up the project, a company headed by Dimitri Johnson, who was most recently the producer of the very well-received Sonic the Hedgehog film. So two different things to talk about here, Chris. A Fallout TV show, which looks like it's going to be very AAA in its approach. And then something unknown regarding Disco Elysium, which is strange, especially because ZAUM, bunch of communists. So it's pretty interesting that they are creating a Disco Elysium TV show. I wonder if they're going to give all the money away. Probably not. Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think about these projects?
I'm actually not. I don't hate the idea of a Fallout show. I think, especially with these writers attached to it, that's actually kind of exciting, because I think one of the biggest draws to Fallout isn't necessarily the gameplay or even necessarily like the choices that you have. It's more like kind of the aesthetic and the tone of what Fallout is. I feel like it could work pretty well as a show. And I think these writers might be able to do it. Like, that's kind of cool. It's the first time that I saw, like, a show based on a video game that I was like, oh, I don't know if I'd mind that, really.
Yeah, Jonathan Nolan's no joke.
Yeah.
So that's, and Amazon is funding it. So it's going to be something very AAA in its approach. I assume something like The Witcher on Netflix. Everyone's trying to get involved now. Yeah, I don't hate it. Fallout's got a continuity with the Great War with China in 2077 and the vaults and stuff, but the games are kind of disconnected, so they could really insert themselves anywhere. It's not quite like The Last of Us that gave me more trepidation because it's really about two characters. Like, Fallout's not really about anyone. It's about something, and that's different. So I think that it's a pretty exciting thing, and I only saw the first season of Westworld, but I was really impressed with it. Yeah. I really liked it a lot.
I really feel like they could do like some Mandalorian tier stuff with it, because it really does feel like a universe that they could explore, and I'm all about it, honestly. Like, I don't hate this at all.
And what about Disco Elysium? What do you think about them doing a show based on that?
No,
I feel like it's not even going to see the light of day, but
I don't think so either. I don't care about Disco Elysium. I haven't played it. Maybe if I play it, I'll like it, but I don't imagine like this. Me liking a show based on a video game is very, very not normal. It's very, very much the exception to the rule. So I don't foresee a show based off a game that I haven't played or didn't really have any interest in playing being something that I'd be really excited for. So I feel like it's probably safe to assume that it's like, whatever. But yeah, whatever.
Yeah, Disco Elysium is supposed to be excellent, and I would like to play it, but this is me putting my money where my mouth is. I'm not supporting that team. At least I'm not comfortable doing it now. They had a portrait of Stalin hanging unironically in their office, and I'm not about, like, they have every right to do that, but I don't think so. That's going to be a no from me, dog. Sorry about that. I mean, you basically might as well hang up a portrait of Hitler in your office. I mean, I 100% think that they're pretty much equivalent. Number 13. This disorganized E3-less summer will continue as multiple publishers have revealed that they intend on making new game announcements in the coming months, all on their own timetables, detached from the typical cycle of trade and consumer shows like E3, Gamescom, TGS, and others. For starters, Square Enix intends on announcing new titles in July and August, according to a report on website Gamatsu. Likewise, Japanese publisher Bandai Namco intends on having a showcase for its anime game products on July 22nd, according to website Push Square, where we'll likely see more of games like Scarlet Nexus, which looks fucking awesome. Push Square also reports that indie darling publisher Devolver Digital is having its own showcase, this one on July 11th, so we have those to look forward to, some new game announcements. And number 14 is a wrap-up. Website Polygon reports that Final Fantasy XIV's perpetually delayed 5.3 patch has been delayed yet again, and now has a release date of August 11th. I think COVID is like wreaking havoc on that team for some reason. The PlayStation blog reports that local multiplayer action game Bacon Switch is coming to PS4 on an unknown date, that action stealth game Budget Cuts is coming to PSVR on September 25th, and that side-scroller Neversong is coming to PS4 on July 16th. Website Gamatsu reports that action RPG Hellpoint is coming to PS4 on July 30th, that Switch side-scrolling RPG Dragon Marked for Death is coming to PS4, according to an internal PSN leak, that RPG creation kit RPG Maker MV is coming to PS4 on September 8th, that arcadey soccer game Street Power Soccer is coming to PS4 on August 25th, that World War I-centric online shooter Tannenberg is coming to PS4 on July 24th, that action RPG Anima Song from the Abyss is coming to PS4 and PS5 at an unknown date in the future, that a new Ben 10 related game called Ben 10 Power Trip is coming to PS4 on October 9th, that RPG Fault Milestone Two Sides Above is coming to PS4 at an unknown point in the future, that action puzzler Pedal Crash is coming to PS4 at some point in August, and that upcoming remastered edition of GameCube game Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, which we already knew was coming to PS4, will have a free-to-play game, a so-called light version of it, that to tantalize new players when it comes to PlayStation 4 on August 27th, rather. Website Push Square reports that fighting game Party Animals, which looks pretty funny, is coming to PS4 later in 2020. That music-based game No Straight Roads is now coming to PS4 on August 25th, having been slightly delayed. That new Dying Light DLC called Hell Raid is coming on July 23rd. And that recently announced Bloodstained Curse of the Moon 2, which I cannot wait for, has a release date of July 10th. And finally, the recently announced Crysis Remastered, which was due to come out on PS4 on July 23rd, has been indefinitely delayed following leaked footage and a reveal trailer that left many players confused as to its quality. A new release date has yet to be revealed. Have you looked at this footage of Crysis?
No, I was going to earlier, but I got to look at it now. I'm curious about it.
Yeah, I haven't actually. I'll look at it as well. Let me see here. Let me Crisis
Remastered.
Because I haven't looked at it yet either. It's supposed to look like ass though. Let's see.
Does it really look that bad? It looks like Crisis. I guess it doesn't look great.
Yeah, I mean it looks fine. I don't know.
Really? This is a
game from 2007. I mean, I'm not even talking into the mic. What am I doing? It's a game from 2007. It doesn't look like it's that bad. It's a remaster. It's not a remake.
Yeah, I guess this doesn't look great, but it doesn't look catastrophic.
Yeah, I was expecting to see something more horrifying than this.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what people's problems are. But yeah, they definitely delayed it. So who knows when we're going to see that fucking game come out. I like the original Crisis actually quite a bit. Chris, this is when we would usually talk about new game releases, but in Sony's schizophrenic nature, there is no drop this week, either a regular one or even a list of games. So there's nothing for us to even make up, which is unfortunate because Silent and Cliche wrote into us and said, "Hey, C-Man, just wanted to pop in and say that I really hope you guys continue to do improv descriptions of games. Even if Sony brings back the real ones, I'd still love to hear you guys riffing on the new names or on the names." Colin, I have to say Chris has a slight edge because of his enthusiastic delivery, but you still had me laughing plenty. Almost got into a wreck. I was laughing so hard at one point. Pretty sure it was the Dig Dug party explosions, but I think we can all agree that it's well worth the risk. Yeah, Chris is definitely better at this than I am, but I'm trying my best to put some comedy and some weirdness in there. And we'll continue to do it, but Sony is not putting up anything this week. And by the way, if you go to the PlayStation blog and read the comments on these posts, people fucking hate them. So who the hell knows what they're going to do? I will say Iron Man VR comes out the day that this comes out on Patreon. So that's the only game I can think of.
Yeah, it's kind of sad that we can't say that's not listed anywhere. Kind of wild. He says I almost got into a wreck because I was laughing so hard. And every time I get comments like that, it freaks me out because I always wonder like who got into a wreck and just fucking perished because they can't write in because I made a joke and killed them.
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, well, it's not funny. Well, it is funny. I guess that is funny.
It trips me out.
All right, Chris, let's get into this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to end our show with, as tradition dictates. David wrote into us, and by the way, it's spelled D-A-I-V-I-D. David. I sound. Who does that sound like?
Oh my god.
The give me more cowbell guy. Why can't I think of his name?
Walken.
Wow, yeah, Christopher Walken. David. Hey, CCs. Now that July has come around and Microsoft's first party event is on its way, I wanted to ask, what do you manly men, think would it take to make most people think that Microsoft's first party games are on par with Sony's? Can Master Chief save them, or would it take something unexpected? Keep making that chicken squeal. Chris, you're more of an Xbox person than I am, for sure. You're excited about Halo. What is going to happen at this first party event that's in the next few weeks? And can they do anything that will make it seem like they're on par, first party par anyway, with Sony?
I actually think their goal needs to not be to seem like they're on par. I feel like their goal needs to be distinct. They need to have a showcase that I think speaks to the variety on that platform, and I feel like they have to have a showcase that relies heavily on offering people an experience that isn't necessarily available in other places. Because I can tell you right now, like I don't want to see anything that looks anything like The Last of Us. Or anything like God of War, you know what I mean? Like I've seen it, I've played it for like the last several years. I got it. Like I get it. Games can do this now. I'm fine. Leave that to God of War. Leave that to Last of Us. Leave that to whatever the hell. I want to see stuff that just looks fun. I want to see stuff that looks like they're trying, and I want to see stuff that just speaks to the IP that they have. I want to see a new Fable, honestly. Like that's beyond just like the Halo stuff that I know I've been waiting for 5 years now. I really am curious to see what they're going to do with Fable, because Fable is such a charming series and I think it has a lot of legs, and there really isn't there really isn't an RPG that has that tone that I've played, and I would love to see that tone revisited because I think it is unique, and I think Microsoft has a lot of these unique properties that they just haven't done anything with in like a long time. And I want to see that. I want to see something made of those experiences, because I think that's where the strength is.
I saw that, actually, speaking of Fable, I saw that, it wouldn't be relevant on our show, so I didn't obviously report it, but Microsoft did renew the Fable IP license, or I guess you should say like the trademark recently with the intent to use it.
Yeah.
Which they marked in there. So I think we are going to see Fable because they did cancel that Fable. What was it? Fable Legends or whatever it was called. Along with remember they also Phantom
Scalebound.
Dust and all this other. It's like all this random ass shit that they canceled. But I agree with you. I don't want to see that stuff either from them. I think it would be a mistake because I don't want to sound like a fanboy, but I don't think they can compete with Sony on those fronts. I don't think they're going to make a game better than God of War, like God of War. I don't think they're going to make a game like The Last of Us that's better than The Last of Us. I think they need to focus on the things they can do well. And I think finding those different niches, I think they can compete in open world role-playing games. They can certainly compete in first-person shooters. They can certainly compete with third-person shooters, cover-based shooters. They can compete with racing games, with Forza and all of this other stuff. So I think they just have to find their own way. They don't want to look like a poor man's Sony because that's not going to reflect well on them.
Yeah.
And so I'm really excited for that event. I want to see it.
Yeah.
And I think we'll do an episode of Sacred Symbols Plus about it. So
Yeah, we should. I don't want to see Master Chief teaching his son how to bury his mom or something. I don't need to see that.
you are going to see Master Chief partaking in Battle Royale though, I think. So get ready for that.
Well, as long as it's a game mode and not the game, I'm fine.
I think it is a game mode as far as I understand. David Graham wrote in and said, Italian Stallion Colin and Latino lover Chris, how do you feel about difficulty-based trophies? I've been playing The Last of Us from the outset in survivor difficulty which the game actually recommends against. While I do appreciate the extra intense experience it gives, I can't help but feel a little miffed by the fact that I won't get an explicit reward once I manage to finish the game. Could this just be a choice made so people don't abuse the accessibility options, or is Sony first party slowly eliminating the concept? Keep it real. Well, Chris, maybe you can send David an explicit reward of your own for beating The Last of Us on survivor difficulty.
Yeah.
How do you feel about this? Like, you were in the Chivos at one time, and
Yeah.
I like difficulty based trophies, but I don't like it when it's on the hardest difficulty. So, like in Uncharted, you have like a novice, or whatever, normal, hard, and crushing. I like that there's no trophy. Just in that example, there would be no trophy for crushing, but there would be a trophy for hard. I like that. I don't like locking your trophies behind like these absurd difficulty levels, like with Doom 2016, which was fucking impossible for me on the hardest difficulty level, or especially Wolfenstein 2, where you had to beat the game on the hardest difficulty level without dying to get one of the trophies, which is fucking nuts.
Yeah, fuck
I mean,
that.
that's absurd. That's absurd. I remember seeing that and being like, you have to be kidding me. That's if you die, you die. It's over. You can't even save.
That Doom has that too.
So how do you feel? Do you feel like there should be more explicit rewards for these kinds of things, or do you kind of just do it to do it? Like we used to play games on hard or get all the S ranks or unlock everything to just do it.
Yeah.
It's almost hard to believe that was the case at one time, but that is true. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I just do it to do it. Like, I think here's what I think that there should be achievements for all of the standard difficulties. I feel like even the hardest difficulty should have an achievement attached to it. But if you have like specialty difficulties, like the one life mode in Doom or Wolfenstein, I feel like that is so extraneous and so hardcore that I don't necessarily think it needs any more satisfaction other than having done it, because I feel like that is enough. Because beating a game on hard difficulty, like, you know, it's fine, but it's nice to have that little trophy attached to it because it makes it a little bit more worthwhile. Beating Doom Eternal in one life, like, I don't even know how you do that. You know, the fact that you've done that at all is like worth 50,000 achievements as far as I'm concerned. So like, good job, congratulations. But I like the idea of just having an achievement for all of or a trophy for all of the primary difficulty settings, even some of the harder ones. But those specialty ones, man, like, there's a mythic difficulty in Halo that, like, it's legend. You don't get an achievement, right? It's just legendary, but you activate all of these difficulty modifiers that, like, it gets rid of your HUD. You can't see how much ammo you have. It's just insane. And it's like, there's no achievement for that because, like, doing it in the first place should be its own thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think when I go into some of these experiences and I'm like, this is fucking ridiculous. I remember watching I don't watch people play games almost ever. And I actually went and looked up the Wolfenstein 2, someone doing the Wolfenstein 2, like, one life hardest difficulty run through. I'm like, how is this even possible? I don't even know how this is possible. There are more, like, Chris, if I got like 8 or 10 hours into that and I died, I would fucking kill myself. You know what I mean? Like I imagine, because you can't save, like, there's no way to spoof it. Like in BioShock and BioShock 2, and BioShock Infinite, when you don't use Vita Chambers or whatever, you can still save the game manually. Like, you can circumvent it. It's not as hard as it seems. But there's like no clever way to get around this. And that puts me, as someone who likes platinum trophies, that puts me off, where I'm like, what were you guys thinking with this? No one's going to get this trophy. I can't even imagine how many people actually have it.
I think that's probably, I don't know. I wouldn't make a game that way, but at the same time, I do understand, like, if that trophy has like a 0.1% rarity, that's kind of cool. That is kind of, I understand the bragging rights of that, being like, yeah, I have this insane, I beat Doom Eternal in one life. And I can prove it to you. Like, I get it, but like, I feel like it does ruin the experience for most people when you have something like that just seems so completely unapproachable. And it's why I think there should be like, I don't know, like maybe like an emblem or something that you unlock, or like some cosmetic thing that you unlock. I feel like that is totally worth it. Like, if you beat Doom Eternal in one life on that hardest difficulty, I think you should get like some in-game reward for it, like maybe like a cosmetic or like a banner or like something, or like maybe your name in gold, or like something to give you something for that achievement, but something that doesn't detract from your overall percentage of achievements or trophies completed.
Yeah, I'm looking actually at Wolfenstein: The New Colossus's entry on PSN profiles. It has a 0.1% rarity, so it's as rare as it can be. And 631 out of 80,000 people on PSN profiles that put this in got it. So that's actually higher than I thought. But it's fucking nuts. I mean, there's actually a huge thread. It's the Mein Leben run, as they call it. And yeah, it takes like there's like a huge thread, and it's full of heartbreak. You know, it's hard. I don't even want to read this. It's fucking miserable. All right. Let's keep going here. Adam Bagford wrote in. I like that last name because it reminds me of, like, you know, in a movie when someone's trying to quickly make up a name, and it's like, and then the camera pans over and it's like a woman holding a grocery bag getting into a Taurus. That's how I feel. I was like, yeah, Bagford. Yeah. He says, hello, random C word Colin and random C word Chris. Now that The Last of Us Part 2 is out, how long do you think it'll be till we see the factions multiplayer? I absolutely love the multiplayer from the first game and really like the additions to the gameplay from part 2. Love the show. I was thinking about that too, Adam, because the new gameplay features and the way the game feels is so good, in my opinion, that it would really shine in factions. Chris, when do you think we'll see factions as a standalone? My theory here is that they're going to re-release The Last of Us Part 2 natively on PlayStation 5. Like, they're going to do it. It's not going to just be a backwards compatible thing. Mm-hmm. And they're going to include factions in it. And I think that's what they're going to do.
Yeah, maybe. I really hate that, but like, yeah, you're probably right. I think that might be the probably. I don't know. Like, would that be smarter than just like making it a PS5, like kind of like a draw to PS5 and having The Last of Us be backwards compatible?
Yeah, maybe. Like, it would be. I just feel like they're not going to not release this game on PS5 in some way, you know, and double dip. Even though the backwards compatibility kind of makes it moot, I still think they're going to try to do it. And so you got to give people a reason to get in. But I think the bigger shame is to lock factions on PS5. Like, what about all the PS4 players that want to play it too? That would kind of be a shame for them. But we don't even know what it is yet. We have no idea when it's coming. I mean, they just mentioned it in passing, like once. Yeah. So we don't have any idea what the hell is going on with this game. But I don't know. Like, I mean, my ideal would be something like a 1999 PS4/PS5 crossplay, cross progression game. Mm-hmm. That's just the online functionality with some maps and whatnot. But I feel like they're going to do something shady. Not Naughty Dog, but Sony is going to do something shady with this one. But so maybe next year.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I don't imagine you're seeing it this year for sure.
No, I don't think so either. It would have been pretty cool to have it as a launch game on PS5, but that's not going to happen. Hazen Brian Master wrote in and said, hey, fellas, I've been playing Star Wars Episode 1 Racer this week, and it got me thinking about how much I miss arcade racers. Yes, we have kart racers and the GT-style sim racers, but is there really no market these days for Jet Moto or Cruisin' USA? Games like these could be a blast and visually stunning on modern consoles, easy to pick up and have fun. Thoughts? All the best to you from Cincinnati. So Episode 1 Racer is supposed to be, I haven't played that game in forever, but it's supposed to be pretty fun, if not a little bit ugly. I've been thinking about maybe picking it up, although I don't really know if I can take it. But yeah, man, I used to love Jet Moto on PS1 a lot. And Cruisin' USA was always a fun game to play in arcade. Do you feel like there's a missing gap here in racing games, Chris, in terms of the arcade racer?
Yeah, I kind of miss them. Like the ones that I always loved. I had this one on Dreamcast called Hydro Thunder, and I loved I loved Hydro Thunder because it was just like it was like jet skis and like boats and stuff. And it was just an arcade racer, like very, very similar to Star Wars and all these other games. It's a fun little genre. I don't necessarily think that there are many people clamoring for that style of game, but I know that if at any point one comes out, I'm probably going to be curious about it. Like I've already looked into episode 1 Racer, but I'll be real, I'm not really a Star Wars guy, so I didn't grow up with that game really at all. I played it at the arcades, but you know, at an arcade, it's such a different feeling because you're in the thing and you're like, there's a tactile kind of almost Steel Battalion type feel to being in an arcade versus just, you know, doing the same thing with a controller. It's the same way that I would argue, like, when I first played Pac-Man on like a controller, I was like, this game sucks. Like, Pac-Man sucks. But then you play Pac-Man on like a joystick on like an arcade machine, and it's like, it's so much better. Like, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's insane how much just the input method can impact your overall enjoyment of a game, because on a D-pad, it's so joyless.
Yeah, it's funny, man, because I feel like Miss Pac-Man especially, is like one of the great games of all time.
Oh, it's way better than Pac-Man.
But you've got to play it. You've got to play it in a very specific way, or it's not going to work.
Yeah.
Like on that old just machine with one button, one joystick.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Because it's all about like, it's all about just like shifting your weight onto it, and like you're doing all these like maneuvers, and it just feels awesome. It's so engaging.
I want to get a Miss Pac-Man machine. I want to get a few arcade machines, but I live in Virginia. It's hot as fucking hell here, and I'm afraid of putting my stuff. I sounded so angry when I said that, and I'm afraid of putting the machines in the garage, and then are they going to like work? I don't know. I have no idea. I was watching Ozark season 3, and it's not a spoiler, but at some point the main character gets like an arcade machine put in his garage. It really is meaningless to the story ultimately, and I was thinking about that there. I was like, is that safe, Marty? Are you all right putting that there? But Marty Bird wanted that arcade machine, and so there it was. All right, let's get through these other couple ones here. Eddie Van Hozier wrote in and said, "Hey, Mozzarella Moriarty, and is it Cotija? Cotia? How do you say that cheese?
I don't know. Cotija?
God, are you or are you not Hispanic?
I've definitely never heard cotija before.
It's a cheese. It's like the cheese that they put on like the. It's like a disgust. I really hate it actually, but it's a cheese. You know, the corn on the cob. The thing that you can get at like a Mexican restaurant. They put the cheese on it. That's that, I think.
Oh, it's Mexican. That explains it.
Yeah, you're not Mexican, so why would you know that? All right. 2 episodes ago, when talking about Rocket Arena, Colin said, "This game is going to fail," in quotes. I've heard you use this proclamation in the past, most of the time correctly, but with a few notable exceptions like the Crash Insane trilogy. Okay, Eddie. Do you ever feel like with your reach and influence that saying something like that can be a self-fulfilling prophecy? I realize that there are a lot of factors involved and your voice isn't the end-all be-all, but couldn't this dissuade people from even trying it? This isn't a criticism at all, just something I was curious about. Thanks for all the hard work, and I love the content. Keep it up. Yeah, I do think about that sometimes. I mean, I'm not going to make or break a game.
Yeah.
When I was at IGN and I had like a huge captive audience, there were definitely examples of games that I helped make bigger, way bigger than they were. The examples are, and by the way, the publishers of these games would tell you that too. The 2 examples that come to mind for me immediately is Ni no Kuni and Catherine, which were 2 games that I wrote about endlessly. I gushed about endlessly and definitely had an effect on those games because I worked at IGN. It wasn't because of me. It was because it was on IGN.
Yeah.
And so we don't have that kind of audience here. And I do try to use I try to responsibly use our platform. I don't want to just, shoo games away and be like, man, this game has no chance. But my job is also to be an analyst. And sometimes I'm going to be wrong, but a lot of times, like you said, I am right. I'm totally right. I was right about the $70 games, wasn't I, guys? I've been saying that since episode 1 of this show. And so I feel like I have a pretty good place in which to say these things. And like you said, with the Crash, for instance, I was catastrophically wrong about Crash. It wasn't even like a little bit wrong. I was totally wrong. I mean, Crash is like living again.
Yeah.
So with Rocket Arena, I saw that game and I was like, this game really doesn't have a prayer of succeeding. That was the game that looks like every other game.
Yeah. That we were talking about earlier.
Right. And how do you feel about this, Chris? How do you feel about using our platform like this? Because I don't want to put my fingers on the scale in any way. I just want to inform the audience as best as I can. That's my job. So I'm going to continue to do that unabashedly. So what do you think?
Our job is also to be honest and not to say things that we don't believe just to placate people's feelings or necessary. Because making games is hard shit. Like, I know that like they spent months, probably years on that game. But if we don't feel, if we feel like it's genuinely a mess, and we don't say that, well, then I would argue we're not using our platform responsibly, because that's part of this is just being honest, and honesty can be uncomfortable, and honesty can be a little bit hostile sometimes, but I would rather be in a situation where I feel comfortable being able to be like, hey, you know what, this doesn't look good, this looks like a mess. I feel pretty confident in saying that this is probably not going to do well. And, if we're wrong, then that's honestly great, because that means somebody else has found success, and that's sick. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. I want every game to succeed. And just looking at Rocket Arena, I was like, why would you play this when you can play all these other games? That's going to continue to be my question about all of these similar games until otherwise noted. That's going to be, if Ubisoft is making a game where I'm like, I don't think so, then certainly these smaller games are not going to stand up much of a prayer with me. But sometimes candor is unfair. It's worth noting that. And so are we being fair to Rocket Arena? Maybe not. But like Chris said, it is our job to be candid nonetheless. And you guys can always hold us account. You never forget anything we say anyway.
Yeah. You
guys are pulling shit out that I've said. I'm always surprised. Like, people pull out shit. I was like, Colin, on Podcast Beyond, episode 177 in 2009. You clearly said, I don't know, dude. I probably walked out of that podcast room and had no fucking idea what I said. I never thought about it again. So
yeah, that's kind of how I feel about every time that we're done. It's like, what? Like, I'll walk into my living room and my roommates will be like, "Oh, what'd you talk about on the podcast?" And I'll tell them, I don't know.
Yeah, we just go into like a trance, like an Edgar Casey style trance during the show.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to Mark Mills, who wrote in, and he has the last question. He says, "Hello, guys. As we already know, an all-digital future is inevitable as far as game distribution is concerned. The somewhat surprising disc-free PS5 announcement a while ago got me thinking." That was surprising, wasn't it? "When will we see the first digital-only AAA game release? And what publisher will pull the trigger? Is this generation too risky to make such a move, or with the poor state of a lot of the world's internet infrastructure, is it still too risky? My belief is that it'd most likely be a first-party studio, and EA or Bethesda would never make such a move first. I see it being a Microsoft studio, as they've always been a bit ahead of the curve in the software and network realms, maybe one of their newly acquired studios like Ninja Theory or Obsidian." This is a good question, Mark.
Yeah.
Thanks for submitting it. The answer is I don't know, and I don't think it's going to happen this generation. As long as there is an ability to put a disc into a machine, it would be foolish to not make it an option in the AAA space when, again, we're talking about $100 million plus investment. You got to sell it to as many people as possible. So I think that's not going to happen this coming generation.
Yeah.
What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I would say that the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to safely be able to acquire physical copies of games. There's a large portion of the United States that cannot get reliable internet, that is swamped by data caps, that is not prepared for the infrastructural boon that would be necessary to make this a unanimous reality. And not to mention all the other countries out there that aren't even necessarily as caught up as we are, and our situation isn't great, who also kind of rely heavily on discs. And that stuff is not going to change overnight. It's certainly not going to change in 5 years. It's certainly not going to change in 10 years. I think we've got a while before this becomes a ubiquitous thing. So by the time this even becomes a question in the minds of the people questioning whether or not they're going to take that first step, the studios in play are probably going to be completely different than they are today. And I think if you're a physical collector, if you're somebody who's looking to collect physical games and still stick with physical media, you're going to have a long road ahead of you before you're going to have to make that decision for good. And I think you don't need to really worry about it, honestly. I think you're good for a long time.
Yeah, well said. I couldn't say it any better. So I won't. Very well said indeed. All right, Chris, that's all we have for this episode of Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. Thank you for joining me today. Appreciate you.
Of course.
Thank you all out there for your love, your kindness, and your support of our show. Remember, go to Patreon, patreon.com/ColinsLastStand to subscribe, get access to Sacred Symbols Plus, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas to our show, early ad-free access to every episode of this show, and other fun perks as well. We'll see you next time for more Sacred Symbols Plus and, of course, Sacred Symbols. Until then, thank you for your time. Goodbye.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product of and a registered trademark of Colin's Last Stand LLC and is recorded from Richmond, Virginia and Burbank, California, USA. This show is conceived by, is written by, and is produced by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is Chris Raygun. You can find me on Twitter at NoTaxation and on Instagram at CLS Moriarty. Chris is on Twitter at Chris R. Gunn and on Instagram at Chris_Ray_Gun. Sacred Symbols is edited by Dustin Furman. To message the show online, please use Patreon's DM service. As you know, all of Colin's Last Stand shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/colinslaststand. The following names are at the producer level or higher on Patreon, and we are eternally grateful for your kindness, generosity, and fandom. Alan Abraham, Morgan Ashley, Saul Balcazar, Taylor Barkley, Martin Beck, Tyler Bello, Mark Boggio, Zach Bonham, Barrett Boswell, Cody Bradbury, Spencer Brand, Miguel Brewer, Lennon Brixey, Josh Bushing, Austin Bullock, Dylan Burns, Chris Bustin, Alex Cabrera, Bjorn Campbell, Patrick Carper, William O'Carroll, Brian Chan, Sean Chandler, David Chestnut, Rodney Coleman, Brad Cooley, John Cordero, Gio Corsi, Philip Crone, Daniel Diamore, Colin Davenport, Jordan Detto, Jerome Ferreira, Joe Finelli, Eric Finkenbeiner, Chris Galvin, Darren Gardner, Connor Gashian, Alex Gates, Michael Gates, Jay Getter, Tyler Goodwin, Josh Gravelick, Miranda Grubba, Eric Harden, Tyler Harris, Richard Hebert III, Kyle Hagel, Robbie Hensley, Blake Israel, Azan Isa Al Ricey, Josh Yeager, Paul Joyce, Greg Juliffs, Anton K, Jeremy Key, Auntie Kinnanen, James Kinslow III, Ryan R. Kittredge, Bo Clant, Kevin Komaki, Mason Cadillac, Greg Latta, Don Q. Lee, Ray Leja, Patrick Leslie, Avery Lewandowski, Keith A. Lewis, Chad Lewis, Lewin Ray Loper, Kevin R. Lord, Colin Love, Scott Lovelace, Josh M., Ryan T. Mandel, Daniel Maraca, Ross Maranka, Matt Martin, Sean Mason, John McCarthy, Josh McKinney, Joe McPartlin, Raul Melendez, Chris Moore, Andrew Morgan, Betty Ann Moriarty, Ryan Murdoch, George Newton, Daryl E. Naiman, Stephen Nieder, Adam Nix, Donnie Nolan, George A. Nunez, Jesse Owen, Jorge Palomino, James Pappas, Andrew Parker, Zach Parsley, Daniel Parsons, Todd Paxton, Marius S. Peterson, Gerald Pennington, Matthew Perdue, Enrique Perez, Jason Pettit, Travis Plymel, Jeff Pollard, Lawrence F. Prokop, Nathan R., Isaac E. Renteria, Peter Reynolds, Shane Rayum, Jonathan Rice, Petra Rose, A.G. Rowe, John Scholz, Michael Shanholz, Toby Shootman, Gregory Slovinsky, Joshua Smallwood, Christian Stewart, Ahmad Tamar, Ben Thompson, Carl Tolman, Alan Tremblay, Constantino Di Valencia, Michael Vecchio, Justin Wagaman, Isaac Wastman, Damon Weathers, Mike Wayant, Corey Wyatt, Tony Zuniga, Galja, Casual Misfits Gaming, Homeworld Hub, Current Gen Podcast, Sticks and Crits, Eskimona Phono, Stellar Brooks, Throw 7, McDog 18, Infinite, Boots, Organic Produce, TB Lightning, Mad Mock Media, Bloody Fang, Mubarak, Vexius, Richter 86, Hugo's Desk, Of Fortuna, Gamer Filmaholic, and Megadet. David